Welcome to Monk's Moon Temple. Tonight we'll explore the gentle wisdom of Zen Buddhism together. Not as complex philosophy or distant ideas, but as simple truths that have helped people find peace for centuries. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. Zen Buddhism reminds us that life becomes easier when we stop fighting against it. When we release our grip on how things should be and open to how things are. When we let go of the constant effort to control everything and trust the natural flow of existence. The teachings we'll discover aren't about achieving something or becoming someone different. They're about recognizing what's already here. The peace you're looking for isn't far away. It's as close as this breath, this moment right now. You don't need to do anything special tonight. Just listen with a quiet mind. Let the stories and teachings wash over you like gentle waves. Some will resonate deeply, others will simply pass by. Both are perfectly fine. Take a slow, deep breath. Let your body settle into comfort. Let's begin this journey together. In Zen Buddhism, there's a teaching that seems backward at first. It says that the more we try to control life, the more it slips away from us. The tighter we grip, the less we actually hold. This isn't just philosophy. It's a practical observation about how life works. We spend so much energy trying to force outcomes. Trying to make things happen exactly as we planned, trying to prevent anything from going wrong. We believe that if we just plan carefully enough, work hard enough, control tightly enough, we can make life bend to our will. This constant effort exhausts us. It creates tension in our bodies and anxiety in our minds. We become like someone trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter we squeeze, the more slips through our fingers. But Zen offers a different way. It teaches us that true strength isn't found in gripping tighter. It's found in learning when to let go, in trusting the natural flow of things, in doing what we can with skill and care, then releasing what we cannot control. This is sometimes called effortless effort or Wu Wei in Chinese, action without strain, movement without force. This doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It doesn't mean we stop caring or stop trying. It means understanding the difference between what's ours to influence and what belongs to the larger movement of life itself. When we learn this difference, something remarkable happens. Life becomes easier. We become more effective, not less. We find peace not because everything goes our way, but because we've stopped fighting with reality. We've learned to work with the current instead of swimming against it. Let's explore a story that shows this truth. There was a farmer named Hiroshi who worked a plot of land in a valley surrounded by mountains. He had inherited this land from his father, who had received it from his father before him. 3 generations of farming wisdom lived in Hiroshi's memory. But Hiroshi was different from his father and grandfather. They had worked with a certain ease, accepting what each season brought. Hiroshi wanted more control. He wanted to guarantee success, to eliminate all uncertainty, to force the land to produce exactly what he planned. Each spring, Hiroshi would create detailed schedules for planting. He calculated the exact day each seed should go into the ground based on weather patterns he'd studied. He measured the precise depth for each type of crop. He determined the optimal spacing between plants down to the inch. He kept notebooks filled with observations, charts tracking every variable he could think of. His wife would sometimes find him sitting up late at night studying his records by lamplight. "Come to bed," she would say gently. "The seeds will grow whether you sleep or not." But Hiroshi couldn't rest. There was always something more to plan, something more to control. When the rains came too early or too late, Hiroshi would become anxious. This wasn't in his plan. He would check his fields multiple times each day, looking for problems, searching for anything that didn't match his expectations. His shoulders would tense, his jaw would clench. He carried a constant worry that something would go wrong. If he noticed a plant growing slower than the others, he would dig it up to examine the roots. If the leaves looked slightly different from what his books described, he would apply treatments. He was constantly intervening, constantly adjusting, constantly trying to force the plants to grow according to his vision. His neighbor, an old farmer named Satoshi, would sometimes watch Hiroshi from across the fence. Satoshi worked his own land with a different approach. He planted his seeds with care, then trusted them to grow. He watered when the soil was dry. He weeded when necessary, but mostly he let the plants do what plants naturally do. Satoshi would arrive at his field in the morning, walk through it once, do what needed doing, then sit under a tree and drink tea. He seemed relaxed, unhurried. Sometimes Hiroshi would see him napping in the shade while his plants grew strong and healthy. One afternoon, Satoshi called over the fence to Hiroshi, who was on his hands and knees examining each plant in a row of vegetables. Hiroshi's hands were covered in dirt. His back ached from bending over for hours. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool breeze. "You're out here every day working so hard," Satoshi said. "But your plants don't look as healthy as they could." Hiroshi stood up slowly, wiping dirt from his hands. His knees cracked as he straightened. It was true. Despite all his effort, despite all his planning and measuring and constant attention, his crops were struggling. Some plants looked stressed, their leaves pale and drooping. Others had stopped growing altogether, stunted at half their expected height. He couldn't understand it. He was doing everything the book said. He was controlling every variable he could think of. "I'm trying to give them exactly what they need," Hiroshi said, frustrated. There was a tightness in his voice. "Come look at my field," Satoshi invited, gesturing with his hand. Hiroshi climbed over the fence, brushing dirt from his clothes. Satoshi's field looked different. The plants were thriving, growing strong and green. The leaves were full and vibrant. The stems stood straight and firm. There was a natural vitality to them that Hiroshi's plants lacked. Even the soil looked healthier, darker, and richer. "How do you do it?" Hiroshi asked, looking around in wonder. "What's your secret? What fertilizer do you use? What's your watering schedule?" Satoshi smiled, his weathered face crinkling. "I don't try to control everything. I work with the land instead of forcing it. When I plant seeds, I put them in good soil and give them water. Then I trust them to grow. Plants know how to be plants. My job isn't to make them grow. My job is to provide good conditions and then get out of the way. But what about all the things that can go wrong? Things do go wrong sometimes, Satoshi admitted. A storm comes, a dry spell happens, insects arrive. But when I'm not exhausting myself trying to control everything, I have energy to respond to real problems when they appear. And the plants, when they're not constantly disturbed, become stronger. They develop deep roots. They learn to adapt to changing conditions. Hiroshi looked back at his own field. He realized something. His constant interference was actually weakening his plants. By digging them up to check roots, he was disrupting their growth. By applying treatments at the slightest variation, he was preventing them from developing their own strength. His need for control was creating the very problems he was trying to prevent. The land has its own wisdom, Satoshi continued. Rain falls when it falls. Sun shines when it shines. Seeds sprout in their own time. I can prepare the soil. I can plant at the right season. I can water during dry times. But I can't make a seed grow faster by pulling on the shoot. I can't force the rain to come. And when I try, I just make myself miserable. That evening, Hiroshi sat at the edge of his field, watching the sun set. The sky turned orange, then pink, then purple. Birds called to each other as they settled for the night. He thought about all the energy he'd poured into controlling every detail, the constant worry, the endless checking and measuring and adjusting. He felt tired in a way that went beyond physical exhaustion. It was a tiredness in his spirit. He looked at his hands. They were calloused and strong, but they trembled slightly from tension he'd been carrying for months. When had farming become such a burden? His father had loved this work. His grandfather had sung while he planted, but Hiroshi had turned it into a battle. The next morning, Hiroshi tried something different. He watered his plants, then walked away. He didn't dig them up to check the roots. He didn't measure their growth against yesterday's measurements. He didn't hover over them looking for problems. It felt strange at first, almost wrong, like he was neglecting his duty. His hands itched to do more. His mind kept suggesting things to check, things to fix. But he remembered Satoshi's words. Plants know how to be plants. The first day was the hardest. Hiroshi found himself walking toward the field, then stopping. He would turn away, then feel drawn back. He had to physically keep himself from interfering. He weeded where weeds were actually choking his plants. He watered where the soil was truly dry, but he stopped the constant interference. He stopped trying to force outcomes. Days passed. Each morning, Hiroshi still cared for his field, but with a lighter touch. He would walk through once, do what was clearly needed, then let it be. He spent less time in the field, but found himself noticing more. The way morning dew sat on the leaves. The patterns the wind made as it moved through the rows. The busy work of beetles and worms in the soil. One morning, about 2 weeks after his conversation with Satoshi, Hiroshi noticed something. A plant that had been stunted, barely growing at all, had suddenly put out new leaves. They were bright green and full of life. He hadn't done anything different with this plant. He'd simply stopped disturbing it. He walked further. More plants were showing signs of recovery. Without his constant disturbance, they were growing stronger. Their roots went deeper, searching for water and nutrients on their own. Their leaves grew fuller, reaching for sunlight. The field was developing a vitality it had lacked before. Hiroshi felt something release in his chest, a tightness he'd been carrying for so long that he'd forgotten it was there. He sat down right there in the dirt, looking at his recovering field and laughed. It was a quiet laugh, almost embarrassed. All this time, he had been the problem. One morning, Satoshi called over the fence again. "Your field looks good now." Hiroshi smiled. "I'm learning to work with it instead of against it. I'm learning that my need for control was the biggest problem of all." As the season progressed, Hiroshi's harvest was the best he'd ever had. Not because he'd controlled everything perfectly, but because he'd learned when to act and when to trust. He'd discovered that there's a wisdom in the natural flow of things that's greater than any amount of planning or forcing. He still prepared his soil carefully. He still planted with attention. He still tended his crops with care, but he no longer exhausted himself trying to control what was beyond his control. He'd learned the difference between responsible action and anxious interference. Years later, when younger farmers would ask Hiroshi for advice, he would tell them, "Do what you can, then trust what you cannot control. The land knows how to be land. Seeds know how to grow. Your job is to provide good conditions and get out of the way. The hardest part of farming isn't the work. It's learning to let go." In Zen Buddhism, this story points to a fundamental truth about the nature of control. We often believe that more effort means more control and more control means better outcomes. But this isn't always true. Sometimes our constant interference prevents the natural wisdom of things from unfolding. The Buddha taught that suffering often comes from our attachment to outcomes. We want things to be a certain way. And we fight against reality when it doesn't match our expectations. Hiroshi suffered not because his field was difficult, but because he couldn't accept the natural uncertainty of farming. His resistance to what he couldn't control created more problems than the actual conditions ever did. Zen practice teaches us to recognize where our effort is helpful and where it becomes interference. Like Hiroshi, learning to care for his plants without constantly disturbing them, we can learn to engage with life without trying to force every outcome. This is the wisdom of Wu Wei. Doing without overdoing, acting without forcing. Let's look at another story that shows this teaching from a different angle. There was a potter named Yuki who lived in a village known for its ceramics. She had studied pottery since childhood, learning the techniques from her mother, who had learned them from her grandmother. Yuki knew all the traditional methods. She understood glazes and firing temperatures and the properties of different clays. Her knowledge was vast, her technical skill undeniable. But despite all her knowledge, despite all her training, Yuki struggled with her work. She had a vision of perfect bowls, perfect vases, perfect teacups. She could see them clearly in her mind, every curve exactly right, every surface flawlessly smooth. She would start each piece with a clear image of exactly how it should look. Then she would try to force the clay to match that image. The clay had other ideas. Pottery, Yuki was learning, involves many things beyond the potter's control. The clay itself has a nature. Some batches are more pliable, others more resistant. The moisture content varies from day to day. The kiln temperature fluctuates despite careful monitoring. The glazes react differently depending on countless factors. The humidity in the air, the minerals in the water, the exact position in the kiln. Yuki would spend hours working a single piece trying to make it conform to her vision. Her wheel would spin and spin as she added more clay here, carved away excess there, reshaped and reworked until her hands were tired and her neck was stiff. Her fingers would ache, her shoulders would burn. Even then, the pieces rarely turned out as she'd planned. Often, they would crack in the kiln, ruined after all that effort. Or the glaze would run in unexpected ways, creating patterns she hadn't wanted. Her workshop was full of broken pieces, failed attempts, projects abandoned in frustration, shelves lined with bowls that were almost right, but not quite. Vases with one side slightly thicker than the other, cups with rims that weren't perfectly level. Each failure made her more determined to control the process perfectly. Next time she would plan more carefully, measure more precisely, try harder to force the outcome she wanted. Some nights she would stay up late, her hands moving over the wheel again and again, fighting with the clay. The lamp would burn low. Her eyes would grow tired, but still she would push, trying to bend the material to her will. One day, a traveling potter named Taro came through the village. He was quite old with hands gnarled from decades of work. He carried a pack of pottery pieces to sell. When Yuki saw them, she was amazed. Each piece was beautiful, but not in a perfect way. They had an organic quality as if they had grown rather than been made. The glazes flowed in natural patterns. The shapes had a vitality that her own work lacked. "How do you make such beautiful pieces?" Yuki asked. Taro smiled. "I don't make them. The clay and I make them together. I don't understand." "Come, let me show you." Taro asked if he could use her wheel. Yuki agreed, curious to watch him work. She expected to see some special technique, some secret method she'd been missing. But Taro's approach was surprisingly simple. He took a lump of clay and placed it on the wheel. His movements were unhurried, almost casual. As the wheel began to spin, his hands touched the clay gently, not grabbing or forcing, just touching, feeling. He seemed to be listening to it with his fingers. His eyes were half closed in concentration. Yuki watched his hands closely. They moved with a lightness she'd never seen before. No tension in the fingers, no gripping or pushing. "This clay is soft today," he said after a moment. "It wants to be something with curves." He began shaping a bowl, following what the clay seemed to want. Rather than imposing a predetermined form, his hands moved in response to what he felt, adjusting as the clay responded. The bowl rose on the wheel, growing taller. Yuki expected him to force it into a specific shape, but instead he seemed to be having a conversation with the material. When the clay wanted to curve outward, he allowed it. When it wanted to thin, he supported that movement. When the clay resisted in one direction, Taro didn't force it. He adjusted his approach, working with what the clay was offering. His hands moved with confidence but without tension. He was guiding the clay but also letting it guide him. It was like watching a dance where both partners led and followed at the same time. You see, Taro explained as he worked, clay has a nature. It's not an enemy to conquer. It's a partner to dance with. When I feel what the clay wants to do, I can work with that desire. The piece becomes stronger because it follows the natural grain and character of the material. Yuki had never thought of it this way. She had always seen the clay as something to be mastered, controlled, forced into the right form. The idea that it had desires, that it wanted to be something, was completely new. Yuki watched closely. She saw how Taro's touch was firm but not forceful. How he responded to what was happening rather than trying to control every moment. When an unexpected curve appeared, he incorporated it into the design rather than fighting to eliminate it. After Taro shaped the basic form, he stepped back. Now the clay needs to rest, he said. It needs time to firm up a bit before I can refine it. If I keep working it while it's this soft, I'll just create problems. Yuki usually hated this waiting period. She wanted to keep working, keep controlling, keep making progress. But Taro seemed content to let the clay be. The next day, Taro returned to the piece. The clay had stiffened overnight. Now he worked on the details, trimming the base, smoothing the walls. His movements were economical, precise. He did what was needed and nothing more. Most problems in pottery come from working too much, Taro said. Overwork, trying to fix every tiny imperfection, refusing to let the piece have its own character. When I was young, like you, I thought more effort always meant better results. I would work a piece until my hands cramped trying to make it perfect. But clay doesn't respond well to force. It becomes tired, loses its structure, collapses. But how do you make good work without controlling everything? Yuki asked. By understanding the difference between skill and control. Skill means knowing how to work with the material. Control means trying to dominate it. I use skill to guide, to suggest, to support. But I let the clay be clay. I work with its nature instead of against it. Over the following weeks, Yuki tried this different approach. Instead of starting with a fixed vision and forcing the clay to match it, she would center a lump of clay on the wheel and feel what it wanted to become. She would notice its texture, soft or firm. She would feel its moisture, whether it was wet or dry. She would sense its responsiveness, whether it moved easily or resisted. Then she would work with what she felt. At first, this was difficult. Her mind kept wanting to impose its plan. She would sit at the wheel and her thoughts would say, make a bowl. Make it this tall. Make it this wide. She would catch herself forcing, pushing, trying to control. Her old habits were strong, but gradually she learned to soften her approach, to listen with her hands, to respond rather than command. She started to notice things she'd been too busy to feel before. The way clay warmed under her fingers. The slight variations in texture that indicated how it would behave. The moment when clay wanted to rise, and the moment when it wanted to spread. Her pottery began to change. The pieces had a naturalness they'd lacked before. They weren't perfect according to her old standards, but they were alive. They had character. The curves felt right in a way she couldn't explain. They fit the hand naturally when you picked them up. And surprisingly, she made fewer mistakes. When she wasn't fighting the clay, it didn't fight back. Pieces stopped cracking in the kiln so often. The glazes seemed to flow more naturally. She wasn't forcing the material against its nature, so it responded with cooperation rather than resistance. One afternoon, several weeks into practicing this new approach, Yuki was working on a vase. The clay was behaving oddly that day, pulling to one side. In the past, this would have frustrated her terribly. Her old instinct was to force it back to center, to make it symmetrical, to control it. Her hands would start to do this automatically. But she stopped herself. She remembered Taro's teaching. She let the clay pull. She worked with that movement instead of against it. The vase became asymmetrical, leaning gently to one side. It wasn't what she'd planned. It didn't match any image she'd had in her mind. But it was beautiful in its own way. It had a grace that symmetry couldn't have given it. That vase became one of her best pieces. When she fired it and applied the glaze, the asymmetry made the glaze flow in an unexpected pattern, like water running down a hillside. People who saw it said it looked like a flower bending toward light. It had a life to it that her more controlled, symmetrical pieces lacked. It felt alive in your hands. Yuki kept that vase on a shelf in her workshop. Sometimes when she found herself falling back into old patterns of control and force, she would look at it. It reminded her of what becomes possible when we stop fighting. She learned something from pottery that extended far beyond her craft. She learned that resistance and force create problems. That working with the nature of things rather than against it leads to better outcomes. That some of the best results come when we release our rigid plans and respond to what's actually happening. The clay had taught her about life itself, about knowing when to act and when to allow. About the difference between guidance and control, about trusting that things have their own wisdom, their own path, their own nature that we can work with, but never truly dominate. Years later, Yuki became known throughout the region for her pottery. People said her pieces had a special quality, a naturalness that made them feel like they belonged in your hand, like they'd always existed. When young potters came to study with her and asked her secret, she would take them to her wheel. She would place a lump of clay on the wheel and say, "Put your hands here. Feel it. Don't think about what you want to make. Feel what the clay wants to become." And then she would add, "I learned to stop fighting with the clay. I learned that trying to control everything was the one thing preventing me from making good work. Now I work with what is rather than forcing what I think should be. This is the secret if there is one. Partnership, not domination. Response, not control." This story shows us another dimension of the Zen teaching about control. Yuki's struggle wasn't with lack of knowledge or skill. She had plenty of both. Her struggle was with her relationship to the creative process itself. Her need for control was blocking the natural flow that makes good work possible. In Zen Buddhism, there's a concept called beginner's mind. It means approaching each moment fresh without rigid expectations about how things should be. Yuki discovered this when she learned to feel what each lump of clay wanted to become rather than imposing a predetermined vision. She moved from force to response, from control to cooperation. The Buddha taught about what he called right effort. This doesn't mean maximum effort or constant striving. It means appropriate effort. Effort that's aligned with the nature of what you're working with. Hiroshi discovered this in his fields. Yuki discovered this at her wheel. They both learned that more force doesn't always mean better results. This teaching applies to all aspects of life. When we try to control relationships, demanding that people be exactly who we want them to be, we often push them away. When we try to control our emotions, suppressing them or forcing them to change, they often become more intense. When we try to control outcomes, gripping them so tightly that we can't adjust when circumstances shift, we exhaust ourselves and miss opportunities that don't fit our narrow plan. Zen practice invites us to do what we can with skill and care, then release the outcome, to engage fully without demanding that things turn out exactly as we planned. This isn't passivity. It's not giving up or being careless. It's a more refined kind of action, one that works with the grain of reality rather than against it. Think of a river. It doesn't force its way through the landscape. It finds the path of least resistance, but over time, moving with patience and persistence, it shapes entire canyons. This is the power of working with rather than against. Like Hiroshi learning to farm with trust and Yuki learning to pot with responsiveness, we can learn to meet life with less force and more wisdom. We can learn that letting go of control doesn't mean losing power. Often it means discovering a deeper kind of effectiveness. One that flows with life instead of fighting against it. One that accomplishes more by forcing less. One that finds strength not in rigid grip but in flexible response. One of the most helpful discoveries in Zen Buddhism is understanding what the mind actually is. We often think our mind should behave in certain ways. We believe we should be able to control our thoughts, turn them on and off like a lamp. When thoughts keep coming, especially uncomfortable ones, we think something is wrong with us. But Zen teaching offers a different view. The mind is more like the sky than like a machine we operate. Think about the sky for a moment. Clouds come and go. Rain falls. Sunshine breaks through. Storms pass. The sky doesn't try to control any of this. It simply allows everything to move through it. And underneath all the changing weather, the sky itself remains clear and spacious. Your mind works in a similar way. Thoughts come and go like clouds. Feelings rise and fall like weather patterns. Sensations appear and disappear like passing rain. And beneath all this movement, awareness itself remains unchanged, just watching, just present. This understanding brings a particular kind of ease. When we stop trying to control our mental weather and instead learn to rest in the spacious awareness that allows all thoughts to arise and pass, something relaxes. We discover that thoughts aren't the problem. Our fight with thoughts is the problem. Let's look at a story that shows this truth. In a monastery nestled in the mountains, there lived a young monk named Nu. He had come to the monastery with a sincere wish to find peace. But instead of peace, he found his mind more active than ever. During meditation, thoughts would race through his mind like horses galloping across a field. He couldn't make them stop. Nu would sit on his cushion, close his eyes, and try to make his mind quiet. But the moment he tried to empty his thoughts, more would flood in, memories from childhood, worries about whether he was doing meditation correctly, plans for the day ahead, judgments about other monks, random images and sounds and fragments of conversations. His mind felt like a busy marketplace full of noise and movement. This troubled Nu deeply. He believed that meditation meant having no thoughts at all. He had heard stories of masters who could sit for hours in perfect mental stillness. He wanted to be like them, but his mind refused to cooperate. The harder he tried to stop his thoughts, the more thoughts seemed to appear. He would spend entire meditation sessions fighting with his mind. A thought would arise and he would push it away. Another would appear and he would struggle to suppress it. It was exhausting work and it left him feeling worse than before he started. He began to think there was something wrong with him. Perhaps he wasn't meant for this path. Perhaps his mind was too busy, too scattered, too broken to ever find peace. One morning after a particularly difficult meditation session, Nu went to find his teacher, Master Hakuin. He found the old monk sitting under a tree in the monastery garden, watching the wind move through the branches. "Master," Nu said, his voice tight with frustration, "I cannot quiet my mind. I've been trying for months, but thoughts keep coming. I push one away and 10 more appear. I'm failing at meditation." Master Hakuin looked at him with kind eyes. "Come sit beside me." Nu sat down on the ground next to his teacher. The grass was cool and slightly damp from the morning dew. They sat in silence for a while, watching the tree branches sway in the wind. Leaves rustled with a soft, continuous whisper. Birds called to each other from hidden places in the foliage. A breeze touched their faces, carrying the scent of pine from the mountains beyond. Nu tried to sit quietly, but his mind was already busy. He was thinking about what his teacher might say. He was judging himself for complaining. He was hoping for some secret technique that would finally make everything quiet. His thoughts moved in circles even as he sat there. "What do you see?" Hakuin finally asked, his voice gentle. "I see the tree," Nu replied. "The branches moving in the wind." "Is the tree fighting with the wind?" Nu looked more carefully at the branches above them. They bent and swayed, moving with each gust. Some branches moved a great deal, bending nearly horizontal in stronger gusts. Others barely moved at all. But none of them seemed to resist. No. The tree lets the wind pass through it. And when the wind moves the branches, is the tree disturbed? Is it suffering? Nu considered this. The branches moved, but the trunk remained rooted, solid, unmoved by the wind that bent its smaller limbs. The tree itself was still there, unchanged. The branches move, but the trunk remains rooted. The tree itself is still there. Your mind is like this tree, Hakuin said, gesturing to the branches above. Thoughts are like the wind. They come and go on their own. Fighting against thoughts is like the tree trying to stop the wind. It's impossible, and the effort only creates strain. The tree would break itself trying to resist the wind. But surely I should be able to control my mind, Nu said, his voice carrying a hint of desperation. Otherwise, what's the point of meditation? Why am I sitting every day if I can't make my mind quiet? Meditation isn't about controlling thoughts, Hakuin explained, his tone patient and kind. It's about recognizing the awareness that watches thoughts come and go. This awareness is like the trunk of the tree, steady and rooted, while thoughts move through like wind through branches. The thoughts don't disturb the awareness any more than wine disturbs the tree's roots deep in the earth. Nu wasn't sure he understood. The words made sense, but they felt abstract, distant from his actual experience. But when I meditate, my mind is full of thoughts. I don't feel any awareness. I just feel busy and scattered. It's like a crowd of people all talking at once inside my head. Hakuin smiled with understanding. That's because you're identifying as the thoughts themselves. You think you are your thinking, but notice this. Who is it that knows thoughts are happening? Who is aware that your mind feels busy? Nu paused. This was a different kind of question. He had been so focused on his thoughts, on trying to control them or make them stop, that he'd never asked who was watching all of this happen. There was something aware of his thoughts. Something that could observe his mind being busy. Something that noticed thoughts appearing and disappearing. Something that knew when his meditation was difficult. There's something watching the thoughts, Nu said slowly, carefully, as if touching something fragile. Yes, that watching awareness is what you actually are. The thoughts are just weather passing through. You are the sky in which the weather appears. The sky doesn't care if it's sunny or stormy. It holds both with the same spaciousness. This struck Nu in a way that words usually didn't. He sat with it, letting it settle. The awareness that was noticing his thoughts, that was hearing the birds, that was feeling the cool grass. That awareness had been there all along. He had just been too busy fighting with thoughts to recognize it. Over the following days, Nu tried this different approach. Instead of fighting his thoughts during meditation, he watched them. He would sit on his cushion in the meditation hall, feeling the firm support beneath him, hearing the breathing of other monks around him. Then he would simply notice what his mind was doing. A thought would arise about what he would eat for breakfast. Rice perhaps, or soup. Instead of pushing it away or getting frustrated that he was thinking about food during meditation, he simply noticed it. There's a thought about breakfast. The thought would linger for a moment, floating in his awareness like a leaf on a pond, then fade on its own. He didn't make it go away. It just went. Another thought would come, a memory of his family home. He could see his mother's face, hear his father's voice. In the past, this would have triggered a whole chain of thoughts. Memories leading to more memories, eventually spiraling into homesickness or regret. But now he simply observed. There's a memory, He watched it appear, stay briefly, then dissolve like mist in sunlight. He wasn't trying to make it go away. He wasn't holding on to it. He was just watching the way you might watch clouds drift across the sky. At first, this felt strange to Nu. He was so used to fighting his thoughts that simply watching them felt like doing nothing. His old habit would reassert itself. He would catch himself getting tense, preparing to push a thought away. Then he would remember Hakuin's teaching and soften again. Just watch. Like the tree allowing wind to pass through. But gradually over days and then weeks, he began to notice something remarkable. When he stopped fighting his thoughts, they actually became quieter. Not because he was suppressing them, but because he'd stopped feeding them with his resistance. It was as if his effort to force stillness had been creating the very agitation he was trying to stop. His fighting had been like throwing rocks into a pond, then wondering why the water wouldn't settle. One morning during meditation, a difficult memory arose. It was something he had felt ashamed about for years, a time when he had been unkind to a younger brother. In the past, Nu would have immediately tried to push it away, creating an internal battle that could last the entire meditation session and sometimes longer. The memory was uncomfortable, and his instinct was to reject it, to make it disappear. This time, he simply watched the memory appear. He felt the uncomfortable feelings that came with it. A tightness in his chest, a warmth in his face. He noticed the thoughts that surrounded it. Judgments about himself. Wishes that he had acted differently. But he didn't fight. He let it all be there like clouds passing through the sky. He let the discomfort be uncomfortable without trying to make it go away. The memory stayed for a moment and then without any effort on his part, it dissolved on its own. Nu felt something release in his chest, like a knot slowly untying itself. He had been carrying this memory with such struggle, always trying to keep it away, always tensing against it when it appeared. But when he simply let it pass through like wind through branches, it lost its power over him. It was just another thought, another piece of weather moving through. Master, Nu said later that day, finding his teacher again in the garden. I think I'm beginning to understand. The problem wasn't my thoughts. The problem was my relationship with my thoughts. I was treating them like enemies, like invaders I had to fight off. Yes, Hakuin replied, looking up from the vegetables he was tending. When we fight with our mind, we create two problems where there was only one, the thought itself and our struggle against it. But when we simply watch thoughts come and go, they pass like everything else. They're not good or bad. They're just mental weather. Rain isn't bad. Wind isn't bad. They're just what happens. Nu continued this practice over many months. The monastery seasons changed around him. Summer heat gave way to autumn cool, then winter cold, then spring warmth again. Some days his mind was quiet with few thoughts drifting through. Other days it was very busy with many thoughts crowding in. But he learned that both were okay. He didn't need to prefer quiet days over busy days. Quiet wasn't better than busy. Clear weather wasn't better than stormy weather. They were just different. He could rest in the awareness that watched all of it. The awareness that remained peaceful regardless of what thoughts were passing through. This awareness was always there, steady and unchanging like the deep water beneath ocean waves. The surface might be choppy or smooth, but the depths were always still. Years later, when Nu became a teacher himself and young monks came to the monastery, students would come to him with the same struggle he once had. They would sit with him in that same garden under that same tree and say, "I can't stop my thoughts. My mind is too busy. I must be doing something wrong." Nu would smile with understanding, remembering his younger self so clearly. "You're not supposed to stop your thoughts," he would tell them gently. "Thoughts are what minds do, like waves are what oceans do. The ocean doesn't try to stop its waves. Your job isn't to make the waves stop. Your job is to recognize the deep still water beneath the surface. That stillness is always there. Whether the surface is calm or stormy, you don't create it. You just recognize it. It's what you are beneath all the mental movement." And sometimes if the student seemed ready, he would point to the tree branches moving in the wind, just as Hakuin had shown him all those years ago. This teaching in Zen Buddhism is often called the witness or the observer. It's the recognition that we are not our thoughts. We are the awareness in which thoughts appear. This might seem like a small distinction, but it changes everything. When we believe we are our thoughts, we take them very seriously. If an anxious thought appears, we become anxious. If an angry thought appears, we become angry. We're completely identified with whatever is passing through our mind at the moment. But when we recognize ourselves as the awareness watching thoughts, we have space. We can notice an anxious thought without becoming anxious. We can observe an angry thought without becoming angry. The thoughts still appear, but they no longer control us. We see them as passing phenomena, like clouds in the sky, not as who we are. The Buddha taught that much of our suffering comes from this misidentification. We mistake the passing contents of consciousness for our true self. But our true nature is the consciousness itself, not its contents. This consciousness is always peaceful, always present, always unchanged by what passes through it. Let's look at another story that explores this teaching from a different angle. There was a wealthy merchant named Toshi who lived in a bustling town near the coast. His business was successful, dealing in fine silk and tea from across the sea. His family was healthy, a wife and 3 children who wanted for nothing. By all appearances, he had everything a person could want. His house was large and well furnished. His reputation was solid. People respected him. But Toshi was not at peace. His mind never stopped. From the moment he woke until the moment he finally fell into exhausted sleep, his thoughts raced. He would plan his next business deal while eating breakfast, barely tasting the food in his mouth. He would review yesterday's conversations while walking through town, not seeing the people he passed or hearing their greetings. He would worry about future problems while spending time with his children, sitting beside them, but not truly present. His mind was always somewhere else, always busy, always moving to the next thing before finishing with the current thing. Even when he tried to enjoy quiet moments, his mind would fill them with chatter. Sitting in his garden, which his wife had carefully tended to be a place of peace, instead of appreciating the flowers, he would think about which merchants might visit tomorrow, what prices they might offer, how he should negotiate. Listening to music, instead of hearing the notes, instead of letting the melody move through him, he would plan his responses to potential business questions. His mind narrated everything, commented on everything, analyzed everything, judged everything. There was never a moment of simple quiet presence. Never a moment when he was just there, just experiencing, just being. This constant mental activity exhausted Toshi in a way that physical work never did. He felt like he was always working, even when his body was at rest. When he lay down at night, his body would be tired, but his mind would keep spinning, replaying the day's conversations, planning tomorrow's meetings, worrying about things that might or might not happen. His shoulders carried a permanent tension bunched up near his ears. His jaw was often clenched, sometimes so tight that his teeth would ache. He slept poorly, waking frequently with thoughts already racing as if his mind had been working even while he slept. One day, a traveling monk came through town. His name was Genzo and he was known for his understanding of the mind. People spoke of how peaceful he seemed, how present he was when you talked to him. Toshi invited him to his house, hoping the monk might have some wisdom to offer, some technique or practice that could finally quiet his restless thoughts. They sat together in Toshi's garden under a wooden pavilion. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting moving shadows on the ground. A small fountain bubbled nearby, water flowing over smooth stones. It should have been peaceful. But Toshi's mind was already racing. Toshi immediately began asking questions, his words tumbling out quickly. How do I make my mind quiet? How do I stop all this thinking? My mind never rests. It's always busy, always planning, always worrying. Even now, sitting here with you, I'm thinking about a meeting I have tomorrow, a shipment that should have arrived. Nothing works. Genzo listened with a slight smile, his face calm and open. He didn't seem rushed or disturbed by Toshi's urgency. When Toshi finished his rapid questions, the monk was quiet for a long moment. He looked at the garden, at the trees moving gently in the breeze, at the water flowing in the fountain. Then he asked, "Who is tired of thinking?" Toshi was confused by the question. It seemed too simple, not addressing his real problem. I am. I'm tired of it. My mind exhausts me with its constant activity. And this I that is tired of thinking, is it thinking right now? Of course, I'm thinking about my mind, about how to fix it, about what you might tell me, about whether this will help or if I'm wasting my time. So, you're using thinking to try to stop thinking? Toshi paused. He hadn't thought about it that way, but it was true. He was thinking about thinking, using thoughts to fight thoughts, creating more mental activity in his effort to stop mental activity. It was like trying to put out a fire by adding more wood to it. I don't know any other way. How else can I solve this problem? Genzo gestured to the garden around them, to the trees and flowers and the bubbling fountain. Listen for a moment. Just listen. Don't think about listening. Don't think about what I'm asking you to do. Just hear what's here. They sat in silence. At first, Toshi's mind continued its usual chatter, making comments about the silence, wondering what the monk was doing, judging whether this simple exercise could possibly help with his complex problem. Thinking about how much time he was spending here when he had so much work waiting. But Genzo had said to listen, so Toshi tried to focus on sounds. He tried to actually hear instead of think about hearing. He heard birds singing in the trees above them. Not just birds, but the specific calls, high chirps and lower warbles, some close by and some distant. He heard the rustle of leaves in the breeze, a soft, continuous whisper that rose and fell. He heard the distant sound of the ocean, waves rolling onto the shore, a rhythmic shush that he usually never noticed, even though he lived so close to the water. He heard the fountain bubbling beside them, water trickling and splashing over the smooth stones. He heard the creak of the wooden bench beneath him as he shifted his weight slightly. He even heard his own breathing, the soft sound of air moving in and out of his body. "What do you notice?" Genzo asked after a while, his voice quiet and gentle, not interrupting the listening, but adding to it. "I hear birds," Toshi said, still listening even as he spoke. "Wind in the leaves, the ocean, the fountain, the wood beneath me, my own breath." And while you were listening to those sounds, truly listening with your full attention, where were your thoughts about tomorrow's meeting? Where were your worries about next week's shipment? Where were your reviews of past conversations? Toshi realized something that surprised him. While he was actually listening, giving his full attention to the sounds around him, his mind had been quiet. Not because he'd forced it to be quiet, not because he'd suppressed his thoughts or pushed them away, but because his attention was occupied with direct experience instead of mental commentary. The thoughts had simply stopped on their own when he was fully engaged in the act of hearing. "They were gone," he said with surprise, his eyes widening slightly. "But now they're back. Now I'm thinking about the fact that they were gone. Thinking about what that means, wondering if I can make it happen again, analyzing this experience." "They come and go," Genzo said, nodding as if this was exactly what he expected to hear. "Thoughts are like visitors to your house. They arrive uninvited, walking through your open gate. They stay for a while. They leave. The problem is that you've been treating every visiting thought as if it's your master. The moment a thought appears, you bow to it. You serve it. You follow it wherever it leads. You give it all your attention and energy. You believe everything it tells you. But I don't choose my thoughts. They just come. Exactly. You don't choose them. So why do you take responsibility for them? Why do you believe them? Why do you follow them?" This was a new idea for Toshi. He had always assumed that because thoughts appeared in his mind, they were his thoughts and therefore he should pay attention to them, believe them, act on them. "Think of it this way," Genzo continued. "If a stranger walked through your gate and started giving you orders, would you obey? Would you believe everything they said? Would you let them control your actions? No, of course not. But when a thought walks through your mind and gives you orders, tells you to worry, tells you to plan, tells you to judge, you obey immediately. You give it more authority than you'd give a stranger." Toshi sat with this. His mind was indeed like a gate that stood open with thoughts wandering in and out constantly. He had been treating each thought as if it deserved his complete attention and belief. "So what should I do with thoughts?" he asked. "You don't need to do anything with them," Genzo said. "Watch them come. Watch them go. Like watching people walk past your house. Some people you might invite in. Others you simply let pass by. You don't need to fight with them or chase them away. You just don't follow them." Over the following weeks, Toshi practiced this new way of relating to his thoughts. When a thought about business would arise during the day, he would notice it. There's a thought about tomorrow's meeting. He wouldn't fight it or try to make it go away or tell himself he shouldn't be thinking about it. But he also wouldn't follow it into an elaborate planning session. He wouldn't let it pull him out of whatever he was actually doing in the moment. He would just let it be there, acknowledged, but not followed. And often it would fade on its own like smoke dissipating in air. When a worried thought appeared, he would notice it too. There's a worried thought about the shipment. In the past, he would have grabbed onto that worry immediately and spun it into an entire story about everything that might go wrong. He would have spent hours imagining disasters, planning responses to problems that hadn't happened yet, exhausting himself with mental rehearsals. Now he simply observed the worry without believing it or following it. Like a cloud passing across the sky. It would drift through and disappear. Sometimes it would come back and he would notice it again. There's that worry again, and again, he would let it pass. This practice didn't make Toshi's thoughts stop. His mind was still active, still generating thoughts throughout the day, but he no longer felt exhausted by it. He had discovered something beneath the constant mental chatter. A quiet awareness that was always present, always peaceful, regardless of how busy his thoughts were. It was like discovering that beneath the waves on the ocean's surface, there were depths that remained perfectly still. He found that he could be present with his children in a way he never had before. One afternoon, his youngest daughter showed him a flower she had picked from the garden. In the past, even while looking at the flower, his mind would have been somewhere else, thinking about work, reviewing conversations, planning ahead. He would have smiled at her, but not really seen the flower or felt her joy. Now he actually saw the flower she held, the delicate pink petals, the yellow center, the pride in her eyes as she shared her discovery. His mind still generated thoughts, but he didn't follow them away from this moment. When he noticed his attention drifting, he gently brought it back to his daughter, to the flower, to the present. He could sit in his garden without his mind narrating the experience or planning future tasks. He could simply be there seeing the flowers his wife had planted, feeling the warmth of the sun, hearing the fountain's gentle sound. Thoughts would still drift through. I should ask the gardener about those roses. Tomorrow I need to, but he didn't follow these thoughts. He let them pass like birds flying overhead. Noticed but not pursued. He could listen to music and actually hear it, not just have it playing in the background while his mind raced through other matters. The notes would rise and fall, and he would be there with them, present to the actual experience of sound entering his ears. His chest would move with the melody, his breath would slow. Thoughts still came, but they no longer carried him away from the music. One evening, Several weeks into this practice, he sat in his garden as the sun set behind the mountains in the distance. The sky turned from blue to orange to pink to purple, colors shifting moment by moment. His mind was relatively quiet, though not completely empty. A few thoughts drifted through, lazy and slow. Plans for tomorrow's meeting with a tea merchant. A memory from earlier in the day when he had laughed with his wife. A passing worry about a business matter that needed attention next week. But Toshi didn't get caught up in any of them. He simply sat on the wooden bench his father had built years ago. Aware of the thoughts but not following them. Aware of the sunset painting the sky. Aware of the cool evening air on his skin. Aware of the peace that existed whether thoughts were present or not. The thoughts were like fish occasionally breaking the surface of a still pond. They appeared, created a small ripple, then disappeared back into the depths. The pond's fundamental stillness remained undisturbed. He realized something in that moment. For the first time in years, he felt truly at rest. Not because his mind was empty, but because he'd found a space that held both thoughts and silence with equal ease. He was no longer fighting, no longer exhausted, just present, just aware, just here. Genzo visited again a few months later, passing through town on his travels. Toshi invited him to the garden again, and they sat on the same bench where they had first talked. "How is your mind?" Genzo asked, his eyes warm with genuine curiosity, not just a polite question. Toshi smiled. A real smile that reached his eyes. Still busy sometimes. Still quiet sometimes. Some days there are many thoughts. Other days there are fewer. But I've learned something important. The busyness or quietness of my mind doesn't matter as much as I thought it did. What matters is that I found the space in which busy and quiet both appear. That space is always peaceful. It doesn't change whether thoughts are rushing or calm. Yes, Genzo said, nodding with satisfaction. You've discovered what Zen calls your original nature. The nature you had before you learned to identify with thinking. It was there before thoughts began when you were an infant, and it will be there after thoughts end. It's not disturbed by thinking any more than the sky is disturbed by clouds. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains the sky. Toshi looked around his garden, seeing it with different eyes than he had months ago. The same flowers, the same fountain, the same trees. But everything felt different because he was different. Or rather, he had discovered what had been there all along, hidden beneath years of constant mental noise. I thought peace meant having a quiet mind, Toshi said. But peace is actually the awareness that watches both quiet and busy minds. It's what I am, not what I achieve. Genzo smiled. Now you understand. This teaching points to something central in Zen Buddhism. The difference between the contents of consciousness and consciousness itself. Toshi's suffering didn't come from having thoughts. It came from believing he was his thoughts, from identifying completely with the mental chatter. When we recognize that we are the space in which thoughts appear, everything changes. We can think without being consumed by thinking. We can experience mental activity without being exhausted by it. We discover a rest that doesn't depend on thoughts being absent. The mind will produce thoughts. This is its nature. Trying to stop thinking is like trying to stop the heart from beating. It's not the goal of Zen practice. The goal is to recognize what we are beneath the thinking. To find the awareness that watches thoughts come and go without being caught up in them. This awareness is always present. It's present when the mind is busy. It's present when the mind is quiet. It's the constant in all our changing mental states. And it's inherently peaceful, not because it has achieved peace, but because peace is its nature. Like New learning that thoughts are like wine through branches and Toshi discovering the space beneath mental chatter, we can find this peaceful awareness in ourselves. It's not something we create or achieve. It's what we are when we stop identifying with the passing contents of our mind. It's here right now, aware of these words present beneath whatever thoughts are moving through at this moment. In Zen Buddhism, there's a fundamental teaching about the nature of reality. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. The flower that blooms today will wilt tomorrow. The child becomes an adult. The strong body grows old. The seasons turn endlessly. Nothing is permanent. This might sound sad at first. We want things to last. We want to hold on to the good moments, the people we love, the things that bring us joy. We build our lives trying to create stability, trying to make things permanent. But Zen teaches us that this very desire for permanence is what creates suffering. When we resist change, we fight against the basic nature of existence. It's like standing in a river and trying to stop the water from flowing. We exhaust ourselves in a battle we can never win. But when we learn to accept impermanence, something remarkable happens. We become free. We can enjoy things fully precisely because they won't last forever. We can be present to life as it actually is, not as we wish it would be. This doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It means engaging fully with each moment while knowing that this moment, like all moments, will pass. It means loving without trying to freeze time. It means building without demanding that what we build lasts forever. Let's look at a story that shows this truth. There was a tea master named Setsuko who lived in a small house at the edge of a village. She was known throughout the region for her skill in the tea ceremony. People would travel many days to experience tea prepared by her hands. But Setsuko was known for something else, too. She had a bowl that everyone admired. The bowl was old, passed down through 3 generations of tea masters. It had belonged to Setsuko's grandmother and her grandmother's teacher before that. The glaze was a deep green that seemed to shift in the light. The shape fit perfectly in the hands. There was a small irregularity in the rim where the potter's tool had slipped, and this imperfection somehow made the bowl more beautiful, more human. Setsuko used this bowl every day for the most important part of her tea ceremony. She washed it carefully after each use. She kept it wrapped in silk when it wasn't being used. She treasured it not just for its beauty, but for the connection it represented. Her grandmother's hands had held this bowl. Every time Setsuko prepared tea in it, she felt that connection, that unbroken line of teaching and tradition. One autumn morning, Setsuko was preparing for a tea ceremony. An important guest was coming, a traveling scholar who had requested the honor of experiencing her tea preparation. Setsuko had risen early before the sun touched the horizon to prepare everything perfectly. She cleaned the tea room with careful attention, wiping each surface until it was spotless. She arranged flowers in the alcove, choosing chrysanthemums that echoed the season. She selected the finest tea leaves, ones that had been stored for just the right amount of time. And of course, she would use her grandmother's bowl. The morning light was soft and golden as she moved through her preparations. Everything felt right. The air was cool. The house was quiet. She could hear birds beginning to sing outside. This was the time of day she loved most. When the world felt fresh and full of possibility. She went to the storage room where the bowl was kept. She unwrapped it from its silk covering, feeling the familiar weight in her hands. The green glaze caught the morning light beautifully. She held it for a moment, as she often did, thinking of her grandmother. She could almost feel the older woman's presence, her patient teaching, her steady hands guiding Setsuko's learning. As she carried the bowl from its storage place to the tea room, she moved through the corridor with care. She had walked this path thousands of times. She knew every board, every corner. But this morning, something was different. Perhaps her mind was already moving ahead to the ceremony. Perhaps she was thinking about her guest. For just a moment, her attention drifted. Her foot caught on the edge of a mat that had shifted slightly from its usual position. She stumbled. Her hands instinctively tried to catch her balance, and the bowl flew from her grasp. It seemed to move through the air in slow motion, turning slowly, gracefully almost, the green glaze catching the morning light one last time. Then it hit the wooden floor. The sound was sharp and final, echoing through the quiet house. The bowl shattered into many pieces, fragments scattering across the polished wood. Setsuko stood frozen, staring at the destruction. Her breath stopped in her chest. The green glaze was now on a dozen separate shards, each piece reflecting light, but no longer whole. The beautiful shape that had fit so perfectly in hands was destroyed beyond recognition. 3 generations of care, 3 generations of teaching and tradition ended in a single moment of inattention, of clumsiness. Her throat tightened. Her eyes burned with tears that she tried to hold back, but they came anyway, spilling down her cheeks. She felt a pain in her chest that was almost physical, as if something inside her had broken along with the bowl. She knelt down slowly, her legs feeling weak, and began to pick up the pieces. Her hands trembled as she gathered each fragment, treating them with the same care she had shown the whole bowl. She found the piece with the small irregularity in the rim that she had loved so much. That tiny imperfection that had made the bowl feel alive, feel human. Now it was just a broken shard, sharp at the edges. She held it in her palm and felt the weight of loss settle into her chest like a stone. The guest would arrive soon. She should prepare another bowl. She should continue with the ceremony. Her mind told her these things, but her body couldn't move. She sat there among the broken pieces, feeling the pain of losing something precious, something irreplaceable. This wasn't just a bowl. It was a connection to her grandmother, to her lineage, to everything she valued about the tea ceremony. There was a soft sound at the door, gentle footsteps on the wooden floor. Setsuko looked up to see an old woman standing there. She was a neighbor, a widow named Chio, who lived alone in a small house nearby and often walked through the village in the early morning, greeting the day with a simple contentment that Setsuko had always admired but never quite understood. "I heard something break," Chio said gently, her voice soft as rain. "May I come in?" Setsuko nodded, not trusting her voice. The tears were still wet on her cheeks. The old woman came and sat beside her on the floor, lowering herself slowly with the careful movement of age. She looked at the broken pieces without speaking for a long moment, just observing, present to what had happened. Then she said, "It was beautiful, this bowl." "It was my grandmother's," Setsuko managed to say, her voice breaking on the words. "3 generations of tea masters used it. And I destroyed it. I wasn't paying attention. I was careless. I failed to protect it." "You didn't destroy it," Chio said. Her tone matter-of-fact but not unkind. "It broke. All things that can break will break eventually. This is their nature. This bowl's breaking came today. If not today, it would have come another day, another year. Perhaps when you were older, perhaps after you had passed it to your own student. The bowl's nature included its breaking, just as a flower's nature includes its wilting, just as fruit's nature includes falling from the tree. But it should have lasted longer. It could have lasted another generation, maybe 2, if I had been more careful, more mindful." Chio picked up one of the larger pieces, turning it in her weathered-lined hands. This bowl served its purpose beautifully for many years. It held tea. It connected you to your grandmother. It brought joy and beauty to everyone who used it. It taught you about care and attention. And now that part of its life is complete. The bowl has done what it came to do. But I'll never use it again. That connection to my grandmother is broken now. The connection isn't in the bowl, Chio said, looking directly at Setsuko with eyes that were surprisingly bright despite her age. It's in you. Your grandmother's teaching lives in your hands, in your knowledge, in your care for the tea ceremony, in the way you move, in the attention you bring to each action. The bowl was just clay and glaze. What mattered was never the object. It was what the object helped you remember, what it symbolized. And that hasn't broken. Setsuko looked down at the fragments in her hands. She realized something that made her chest tighten in a different way. She had been treating the bowl as if it would last forever. She had been careful with it, yes, but she had also been taking it for granted in a way. She had assumed it would always be there. She had thought she would use it for many more years, perhaps decades. She had never truly appreciated its temporary presence in her life. "I never really saw it," she said quietly, the understanding settling into her like morning dew. "I used it every day, but I never truly saw it. I was always thinking ahead to the next ceremony, the next guest, the next season. I never stopped to appreciate that this bowl, this moment of using it was precious exactly because it wouldn't last forever. I thought I had time. I thought it would always be there. The old woman smiled, a gentle expression that held understanding without judgment. Now you understand something important. When we know something won't last forever, we can truly appreciate it. The flower is precious because it will wilt. The tea is savored because it will be drunk. The moment is beautiful because it will pass. If the cherry blossoms lasted all year, would we travel to see them? Would we sit beneath them and feel moved by their beauty? We treasure things precisely because they're temporary. Setsuko's guest arrived later that morning. The scholar was an elderly man with kind eyes and a patient manner. She served tea in a simple newer bowl, one she had made herself during her training. It was plain compared to her grandmother's bowl without the depth of color or the history, but she was present for the ceremony in a way she had never been before. She felt the warmth of the tea as she prepared it. She noticed the way steam rose from the bowl in delicate wisps. She saw the guest's appreciation, the way his face softened as he received the tea. She was fully there, knowing that this ceremony too would end. This moment too would pass. This guest would leave. This tea would be drunk. This morning would become afternoon and then evening and then a memory. Everything was passing and that made it precious. The ceremony felt different than any she had performed before. Usually, her mind would be partly elsewhere, checking her technique, worrying about mistakes, thinking about past ceremonies or future ones. Now, she was just here, just present to this moment, this guest, this tea, this simple bowl that held warmth and care even though it lacked history. After the guest left, thanking her with deep bows for the beautiful ceremony, Setsuko took the broken pieces of her grandmother's bowl and sat with them in the quiet of her tea room. She thought about what Chiyo had said. She thought about impermanence and appreciation and presence. After the guest left, Setsuko took the broken pieces of her grandmother's bowl and following an old tradition, she carefully repaired it using gold lacquer to join the fragments. This technique called kintsugi doesn't try to hide the breaks. Instead, it highlights them, making them part of the bowl's new beauty. When she finished, the bowl was changed. The gold lines traced across its surface showed exactly where it had broken. But these lines made it more beautiful than before. The bowl now told a story. It showed its breaking and its healing. It showed that broken things can become whole again, not by pretending they were never broken, but by incorporating the breaking into their beauty. Setsuko never used the repaired bowl for ceremonies again. It was too fragile. But she kept it on a shelf where she could see it every day. The gold lines reminded her of that morning, of the breaking, of the lesson learned. They reminded her that nothing lasts forever, and that this isn't sad. It's what makes life precious. Years later, students would ask Setsuko about the bowl with the gold lines. She would tell them the story and then say, "I loved that bowl when it was whole, but I took it for granted. Now I love it more deeply because I understand that nothing lasts forever. This understanding doesn't make me sad. It makes me present. It makes me grateful for each moment, each ceremony, each bowl of tea, knowing that all of it is temporary and therefore precious." This teaching about impermanence is at the heart of Zen Buddhism. The Buddha taught that all compounded things are impermanent. Everything that comes together will eventually come apart. This isn't a flaw in the universe. It's simply how things are. We suffer when we try to make the impermanent permanent. We cling to people, to things, to moments, to states of being, trying to freeze them in time. But life won't be frozen. The river keeps flowing. The seasons keep turning. But when we stop resisting this flow, we discover a freedom that's more satisfying than any permanence we could imagine. In fact, when we truly accept impermanence, we discover a deeper way of loving and living. We appreciate things more fully when we know they won't last forever. We're more present when we understand that this moment will never come again. We love more deeply when we know that time with loved ones is limited. Let's look at another story that explores this teaching. There was a gardener named Fumiko who worked at a temple. She had tended the temple garden for 20 years, and in that time she had created something remarkable. The garden was known throughout the region for its beauty in every season. Spring brought cherry blossoms that drew visitors from far away. People who would travel for days just to sit beneath the flowering trees. Summer offered cool green shade, and the sound of water trickling through carefully placed stones, a refuge from the heat. Autumn turned the maple trees brilliant red and gold, creating a display so vivid it seemed almost unreal. Even winter had its beauty, with snow highlighting the shapes of bare branches and evergreen pines standing dark against white. But Fumiko had a favorite season, spring. She loved the cherry blossoms most of all, loved them with an intensity that bordered on pain. For 50 weeks of the year, she would tend the garden, preparing for those 2 weeks when the cherry trees would bloom. She would prune carefully in late winter, making sure each cut was precise, thinking always of the blossoms to come. She would fertilize the soil with exactly the right mixture, testing and adjusting. She would watch the weather, worry about late frosts, protect the buds with coverings if needed. Everything she did was in service of those 2 weeks of blooming. And when the blossoms finally opened, when the trees transformed from bare branches to clouds of pink, she would spend every spare moment in the garden. She would sit beneath the flowering branches for hours, watching the pink petals glow in the sunlight, listening to bees moving from blossom to blossom, breathing in the delicate scent. She felt fully alive during those 2 weeks, as if the rest of the year was just preparation for this moment. But those 2 weeks always passed too quickly. It seemed that just as the blossoms reached their peak beauty, they began to fall. The petals would loosen and drift down. First a few, then many, then a constant shower. And each year as the petals fell, Fumiko would feel a deep sadness settle over her like a blanket. The beauty was ending. The blossoms were dying. Another year of waiting stretched ahead. She had waited so long, worked so hard, and now it was over. The joy she felt during blooming was matched by the sorrow she felt during falling. One spring a traveling monk came to stay at the temple. His name was Basho and he was very old. His face deeply lined, his back bent from many years of walking. He asked permission to sit in the garden and the temple master agreed. Basho would sit under the cherry trees each day watching the blossoms. Fumiko noticed that he seemed completely content whether the trees were in full bloom or whether petals were falling. He didn't seem sad when the blossoms began to drop. He just sat present to whatever was happening. One afternoon, Fumiko was sweeping fallen petals from the path. She was working quickly, a tightness in her chest, trying to clear away the evidence of fading beauty. Basho was sitting nearby, watching petals drift down around him. "You seem troubled," Basho said gently. Fumiko stopped sweeping. "The blossoms are falling. Soon, they'll all be gone. I wait all year for this beauty, and it lasts such a short time. It seems cruel." Basho smiled. "Come sit with me for a moment." Fumiko set aside her broom and sat on the bench beside him. They watched in silence as petals fell around them. One landed on her hand, soft and delicate. She looked at it closely. The pink was fading at the edges. Soon this petal would turn brown and dry up. "Why do you think the cherry blossoms are beautiful?" Basho asked. "Because of their color, their delicate shape, the way they transform the trees. And would they be as beautiful if they bloomed all year long?" Fumiko thought about this. She imagined cherry blossoms in summer, in autumn, in winter. Always there, always pink, never changing. "No," she said slowly. "I don't think they would be." "Why not?" "Because part of their beauty is their rarity. Part of what makes them special is that they come only once a year and last only a short time." "Yes," Basho said. "The cherry blossoms are beautiful precisely because they're impermanent. If they lasted forever, you would stop seeing them. You would walk past them without noticing. But because they bloom briefly, you appreciate every moment of their presence. You plan your year around them. You sit beneath them and really look at them. Their impermanence makes them precious." A petal landed on Fumiko's lap. She picked it up carefully. "But I'm sad when they fall." "You're sad because you're trying to hold on to something that's already passing. You're resisting the natural flow of the season. But watch what happens when you stop resisting." Fumiko sat quietly, holding the petal. She stopped trying to keep the blossoms from falling. She stopped wishing they would last longer. She just watched. A breeze came and dozens of petals swirled through the air. It was like pink snow, beautiful and fleeting. One petal caught in her hair. Several landed on Basho's shoulders. They settled on the ground like a carpet. And Fumiko realized something. The falling was beautiful, too. The petals drifting through the air, the way they carpeted the ground. This was part of the cherry blossom's beauty. She had been so focused on the blooming that she had missed the beauty of the falling. "Every season has its gift," Basho said. "Spring brings blossoms. Summer brings green shade. Autumn brings colored leaves. Winter brings quiet and rest, but you've been wishing spring would last forever, so you missed the gifts of other seasons. You've been holding on to what's passing instead of receiving what's coming." Over the following months, Fumiko tried to practice this teaching. When the cherry blossoms finished falling, she noticed how the trees leafed out with fresh green. The shade was cooler now, pleasant in the warming weather. Birds nested in the branches, filling the garden with song. When summer came, she appreciated the full lush green of the garden, the way the maple leaves created dancing shadows, the sound of cicadas in the evening. She wasn't wishing it was still spring. She was present to summer. When autumn arrived, she watched the leaves change color with wonder. The maples that had been green turned brilliant red and gold. The ginkgo trees became bright yellow. Instead of being sad that green had gone, she marveled at the new beauty that autumn brought. And when winter came, she found beauty there, too. The bare branches created elegant lines against the sky. Snow collected on the evergreen pines. The garden had a spare, quiet beauty that she had never fully appreciated before because she'd always been waiting for spring to return. When spring came again, Fumiko found that she loved the cherry blossoms even more than before. But now her love wasn't mixed with grasping. She didn't need them to last forever. She enjoyed them fully during their brief blooming, and when they fell, she enjoyed the falling. She had learned to love each season for what it offered, not wish it was a different season. Years later, the temple master asked Fumiko what she had learned from tending the garden for so long. She thought for a moment, then said, "The garden taught me about life. Everything changes. Every season ends. But each season is complete in itself. Spring doesn't fail because it becomes summer. The cherry blossoms don't fail because they fall. They do exactly what they're meant to do. Bloom beautifully and let go. I've learned to do the same. To be fully present to each moment, each season of my life, and then let it go when it's time to change." This teaching about embracing change connects directly to how we experience our own lives. We go through seasons, too. Childhood, youth, adulthood, old age, periods of growth and periods of rest. Times of ease and times of challenge. Each season has its own beauty, its own gifts, if we can be present to it instead of wishing we were in a different season. The Buddha taught that suffering comes from craving, from wanting things to be different than they are. We want pleasant experiences to continue forever. We want unpleasant experiences to end immediately. We want to keep what we have and get what we don't have. This constant wanting, this resistance to the natural flow of life creates endless suffering. But when we learn to accept impermanence, we discover a kind of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. We can appreciate good times while they're here without clinging to them. We can endure difficult times knowing they too will pass. We can engage fully with life without demanding that life freeze in place for us. This is the wisdom that Setsuko discovered through her broken bowl and Fumiko learned through the changing seasons. Everything changes. Everything passes. And this impermanence, when we stop fighting it, becomes not a source of sadness but a reminder to be fully present, to appreciate what's here now. To love deeply while we can, knowing that this too shall pass. And that's exactly as it should be. In Zen Buddhism, there's a teaching that seems puzzling at first. It says that the tighter we hold on to things, the more we suffer. Not just physical things but ideas, beliefs, expectations, and even our own identity. We think that holding on keeps us safe. We think that attachment means love. But Zen teaches us something different. Attachment isn't the same as love or care. You can care deeply about something without grasping it. You can love fully without needing to possess or control. In fact, when we hold things lightly, we often enjoy them more. When we release our grip, we discover a freedom we never knew was possible. Think about holding sand in your hand. If you cup your hand gently, the sand stays. But if you close your fist tightly, trying to hold on with all your strength, the sand slips through your fingers. This is how attachment works. The tighter we grasp, the more slips away. This teaching doesn't mean we shouldn't care about anything. It doesn't mean we should live without love or connection. It means learning the difference between caring and clinging, between loving and possessing, between engaging and attaching. When we learn this difference, we discover a lightness in living that changes everything. Let's explore a story that shows this truth. There was a wealthy merchant named Katsuro who lived in a large house in the city. He had spent his entire life building his wealth. Starting with nothing as a young man, the son of a poor family. He had worked hard for decades, made smart decisions, seized opportunities when they came, and over many years had accumulated a fortune that most people could only dream of. His house was filled with valuable things. Fine furniture made by master craftsmen. Each piece selected with care. Paintings and scrolls by famous artists, some so rare that collectors traveled from distant provinces hoping to see them. Ceramics that were hundreds of years old, each with a history and provenance. Silk robes in colors that seemed to glow in lamplight. Gold ornaments that gleamed. Rare books with pages so delicate they crackled when turned. He would spend hours each day arranging his possessions, making sure each piece was displayed perfectly in the best light at the right angle. He kept detailed records of what he owned, written in careful characters in leather-bound books. He recorded where he had acquired each item from which dealer or auction. He noted what it was worth, what others had offered for it, how its value had changed over time. Visitors to his house would admire his collection, walking through the rooms with wide eyes, and Katsuro felt a deep satisfaction in their praise, in their envy, in the way they treated him with respect because of what he owned. But despite his wealth, despite the beauty surrounding him on all sides, Katsuro was not at peace. He worried constantly about his possessions. What if something broke? What if thieves came in the night? What if fire swept through the city as it sometimes did? What if an earthquake shook the house and his ceramics fell? The worries circled in his mind like birds that never landed. He checked the locks on his doors multiple times each night before bed, then would lie awake listening for sounds, unable to rest. He would wake in the darkness, his heart pounding from dreams of loss, and have to get up to check that everything was still in its place. His servants had to be extremely careful, moving through the house as if walking on ice. Once a young maid accidentally chipped a cup while cleaning, and Katsuro raged at her for an hour, his face red with anger, his voice harsh over this damaged object. The girl had cried, and later Katsuro felt ashamed of his outburst, but he couldn't seem to control his reactions when it came to his possessions. His house was large and beautiful, filled with things that people traveled to see, but it felt like a cage. He couldn't travel to other cities or provinces because he didn't trust anyone to watch over his things properly. He couldn't go visit old friends or explore the countryside because he needed to be here guarding, protecting. He couldn't relax even when he was home because he was always monitoring, checking, worrying, making sure nothing was out of place or damaged. The more he owned, the more he had to protect. The larger his collection grew, the heavier his burden became. Sometimes he felt like he was drowning under the weight of all his beautiful things. One spring, a traveling monk came through the city. His name was Ryokan and he was known for living with almost nothing. He owned one robe patched and worn. One bowl for eating and drinking, nothing more. He carried no money, no extra clothes, no possessions of any kind. Yet people who met him said he seemed happier than anyone they'd ever met. He had a lightness about him, a joy that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Katsuro heard about this monk and was puzzled. How could someone with nothing be happy? It didn't make sense. He invited the monk to his house, curious to meet him, perhaps hoping to understand his secret. Ryokan arrived wearing his simple robe, carrying his single bowl. The robe was clean, but you could see where it had been mended many times. The bowl was plain clay, nothing special. Katsuro led him through the house, showing him the collection room by room. The paintings that collectors coveted, the ceramics that were worth more than most people earned in a lifetime, the fine furniture, the silk robes, the gold ornaments, the rare books. He explained the history of each piece, how hard he had worked to acquire it, what it was worth. He expected the monk to be impressed, perhaps even envious. After all, wasn't this what everyone wanted? Wealth, beautiful things, security. But Ryokan just looked at everything with a gentle smile. His eyes passed over the valuable objects without lingering, without the hunger or desire that Katsuro was used to seeing in visitors' faces. He didn't seem particularly interested or impressed. He nodded politely but didn't ask questions about provenance or value or rarity. When they sat down to drink tea in Katsuro's finest tea room, surrounded by his best pieces, Katsuro felt oddly unsettled by the monk's calm indifference. "What do you think of my collection?" he asked, needing some reaction, some acknowledgement of what he had achieved. "Very beautiful," Ryokan said simply, sipping his tea with the same appreciation he might have for ordinary tea in an ordinary cup. "I've spent my whole life gathering these things," Katsuro said, a slight edge in his voice. "Each piece is valuable, rare. Some are unique in the world. Don't you wish you had beautiful things like these?" Ryokan was quiet for a moment, sipping his tea, looking out at the garden visible through the open screen. Then he said, "I do have beautiful things. This morning I watched the sunrise from a hillside outside the city. The sky turned pink and orange and gold. It cost me nothing, yet it was more beautiful than any painting. I heard birds singing in the trees. Dozens of different songs. I felt the warmth of the sun on my face. I saw flowers blooming by the roadside. I have beauty all around me all the time. Every day is full of it. But you don't own any of it," Katsuro said, not understanding. "Those things aren't yours. You can't control them. Anyone can look at a sunrise. Do you own the sunrise?" Ryokan asked, his tone genuinely curious, not challenging. "Can you put it in your house? Can you lock it away to keep it safe?" Yet you enjoyed looking at it when you were younger, didn't you? Or perhaps you still would if you took time to see it. Katsuro had to admit he couldn't remember the last time he'd watched a sunrise. He was usually too busy checking his possessions in the morning to notice things like that. When had he stopped looking at the sky? I noticed you checking the locks on your doors several times while we talked, Ryokan continued. I noticed you glancing at your things, making sure they're still in place. You have all these beautiful objects, but do you enjoy them? Or do you spend all your time worrying about protecting them? This observation struck Katsuro deeply. It was true. He rarely simply enjoyed his collection anymore. He was too busy worrying about it. Each beautiful object had become a source of stress rather than pleasure. But what about security? Katsuro asked. Don't you worry about having nothing? What if you get sick? What if you need help? What if winter comes and you have no shelter? I worry much less than you do, Ryokan said with a smile. What can thieves steal from me? I have nothing worth stealing. What can fire destroy? I have nothing that can burn. I am free in a way you are not despite all your wealth. Free. The word felt strange to Katsuro. They own you more than you own them. Every object you acquire is another chain. Another thing to protect, to worry about, to maintain. I have one bowl. If it breaks, I get another. I have one robe. If it wears out, I get another. Nothing I have is so precious that I can't let it go. This is freedom. That night, after Ryokan left, Katsuro walked through his house, looking at his collection with new eyes. Each beautiful object suddenly looked different. He saw them not as treasures but as burdens. Each one required his attention, his worry, his protection. He felt their weight on his shoulders, in his chest. He thought about how he lived. Trapped in his house, imprisoned by his possessions, unable to travel, unable to relax, unable to enjoy anything because he was always on guard. Was this success? Was this the life he had worked so hard to build? Over the following months, Katsuro began to change. He didn't give away everything immediately, but he started to hold his possessions differently. He stopped checking the locks so obsessively. He stopped worrying so much about every small thing. When a servant accidentally broke a plate, he surprised himself by not getting angry. It was just a plate. It could be replaced. It wasn't worth his peace of mind. He began to notice that the less tightly he held his things, the more he actually enjoyed them. When he stopped worrying so much about protecting a painting, he could actually look at it and appreciate its beauty. When he stopped treating his ceramics as if they were more important than people, he could invite friends over without anxiety. One evening he was sitting in his garden watching the sunset. The sky was brilliant with color, orange and pink and purple. It was beautiful and it cost him nothing. He didn't own it. He couldn't protect it or control it. In a few minutes, it would be gone. But right now, it was here. And he was seeing it, enjoying it, feeling moved by it. He thought about Ryokan with his single bowl, his one robe, his complete freedom. Katsuro still had his house, his possessions, his wealth, but now he held them lightly. He enjoyed them without grasping them. He cared for them without being enslaved by them. Years later, when fire did sweep through part of the city, Katsuro's house was damaged. Some of his collection was lost. His friends expected him to be devastated. But Katsuro surprised them by remaining calm. "Things come and things go," he said. "I enjoyed them while they were here. Now they're gone. I still have my life, my health, my freedom." The fire took possessions, but it couldn't touch what really matters. People noticed that Katsuro seemed lighter after the fire, happier than he had been when his collection was intact. When they asked him about this, he would say, "I learned from a monk with one bowl that true wealth isn't what you own. It's your freedom from being owned by what you have. I'm richer now with less than I was before with more." This teaching about non-attachment is central to Buddhist wisdom. The Buddha taught that attachment is one of the primary sources of suffering. Not love, not care, not engagement with life, but attachment, the grasping, the clinging, the belief that we must possess things to be happy. We attach to many things beyond physical possessions. We attach to ideas about how life should be. We attach to our plans and expectations. We attach to our own image of who we are. And each attachment becomes a source of potential suffering because nothing stays the same. Life doesn't follow our plans. People don't behave as we expect. Even our own identity changes over time. When we learn to hold things lightly, we don't love them less. We actually experience them more fully. We're present to them without the overlay of fear about losing them. We enjoy them without the burden of grasping. This is the freedom that Ryokan showed Katsuro. The freedom that comes not from having nothing but from holding everything lightly. Let's look at another story that explores this teaching from a different angle. There was a calligrapher named Hannah who lived in a small town. She was skilled at her art, trained from childhood, and people would come to her when they needed beautiful writing for important documents, for poems they wanted to display, for gifts they wanted to give to honored teachers or officials. Hannah's calligraphy was known throughout the region for its grace and precision. Each character she created was studied, planned, executed with care. Each stroke followed the classical forms exactly right. Or at least that's what she aimed for. But Hannah had a problem. She was so attached to perfection, so convinced that anything less than absolute mastery was failure that she could barely work. She would sit at her low desk, her materials laid out before her. She would prepare her ink carefully, grinding the ink stick against the stone with water until the consistency was exactly right. Testing it on scrap paper, she would select paper, choosing from her best sheets. She would ready her brush, forming the tip into a perfect point. And then she would freeze. What if she made a mistake? What if the character wasn't perfect? What if her hand slipped even slightly? What if the ink bled into the paper in an unplanned way? Paper was expensive, each sheet representing a significant cost. Ink took time to prepare properly. Each attempt had to be perfect or it was wasted. The pressure of this thinking was crushing. She would sometimes sit for hours with brush in hand, the ink drying on the tip, too afraid to make the first stroke. The fear of imperfection paralyzed her completely. She could see the perfect character in her mind, could visualize exactly how it should look. But the distance between that mental image and what her hand might actually produce felt vast, unbridgeable. When she finally did begin, after talking herself into it, encouraging herself, forcing herself, she would be so tense that her hand would shake slightly, her breathing would be shallow, her shoulders would be up near her ears, and often she would make a small error, a stroke slightly too long or angled wrong, and she would throw away the entire piece in frustration, crumpling it, feeling like a failure. Her floor was covered with discarded attempts, papers crumpled and tossed aside. Each one showed talent, showed training, showed understanding of the forms, but none met her impossible standards. None matched the perfect image in her mind. She was trapped between the ideal and the real, unable to accept anything less than perfection, unable to achieve the perfection she demanded. Hannah's teacher, an old calligrapher named Soyen, came to visit. He found her sitting at her desk, staring at blank paper, her brush hovering but not moving. He watched for a while, then said, "You're holding the brush too tightly." Hannah looked at her hand. Her knuckles were white from gripping the brush so hard. "I need to control it," she said. "Show me," Soyen said, gesturing to the paper. Hannah tried to begin. Her hand was so tense that the first stroke came out shaky, uncertain. She stopped immediately, setting down the brush. "See, I can't do it right." Soyen picked up a brush. He prepared it with ink, then held it loosely in his hand. His grip was so light that it looked like the brush might fall. But when he moved his hand, the brush followed naturally, creating a character on the paper with flowing, confident strokes. The character was beautiful, alive with energy. "How did you do that?" Hannah asked. "Your grip was so loose." "Because I wasn't holding on," Soyen explained. "When you hold the brush lightly, it moves naturally. Your hand, your arm, your whole body can flow together. But when you grip tightly, trying to control every tiny movement, you create tension. The tension makes the movement stiff, unnatural. But what if I make a mistake?" "Then you make a mistake," Soyen said simply. "Look at this character I just wrote. See this stroke here? It's not perfectly even. It has a slight wobble, but does that make it ugly? Or does it make it alive, human, interesting?" Hannah looked at the character. The slight imperfection he mentioned didn't ruin it. In fact, it gave the character a quality that perfectly uniform strokes couldn't provide. It looked like it had been made by a human hand with all the small variations that come with being alive. "You're so afraid of making mistakes that you can't create anything at all," Soyen continued. "You hold on so tightly to your idea of perfection that you strangle the life out of your work. Let go. Hold your brush lightly. Hold your expectations lightly. Allow mistakes to be part of the process." Over the following weeks, Hannah practiced this teaching. She tried to hold her brush more loosely, though every instinct screamed at her to grip tightly to control. At first, her writing got worse, much worse. Without her tight control, the strokes wandered in unexpected directions. Characters came out crooked, tilted, misshapen. She made many mistakes, more mistakes than she'd ever allowed herself before. Part of her wanted to go back to her old way to at least have the illusion of control, even if it meant paralysis. But she kept practicing, remembering Soyen's demonstration, remembering the life in his character with its slight wobble. And gradually over days and then weeks, something shifted. It was subtle at first, hardly noticeable, but she began to feel it. She noticed that when she held the brush lightly, her whole body relaxed. Her shoulders dropped from where they had been hunched near her ears. Her breathing became easier, deeper, more natural. Her mind became quieter, less full of self-criticism and fear. The constant internal commentary that had been judging every stroke began to fade. She found herself entering a state of flow where she wasn't thinking about each movement, but just moving, just creating, just letting the brush dance across the paper. And slowly her calligraphy began to change. The characters still weren't perfect in the way she had once demanded. You could see the human hand in them, the small variations that showed they were made by a living person and not a machine. But they had something her over-controlled work had lacked. They had life. They had flow. They had energy that seemed to move through the strokes. They felt spontaneous, fresh, present. One day, a wealthy patron came to her door asking for a poem to be written out for a special gift. It was for his aged father's birthday, a poem about long life and happiness. In the past, Hannah would have been paralyzed by the importance of the commission. She would have spent days preparing, worrying, practicing, and still might not have been able to complete it. This time she invited the patron in, listened to what he wanted, read the poem several times to understand its feeling. Then she prepared her materials with care but without excessive fuss. She took a breath, feeling the air fill her lungs. She held her brush lightly, feeling its weight balanced in her relaxed fingers, and she began. She let each stroke flow naturally from the one before. She let the characters form themselves through her hand rather than forcing them into existence. When a small imperfection appeared in one character, a slight thickness where the ink pulled, she didn't stop and start over. She didn't crumple the paper in frustration. She simply continued, trusting the overall flow rather than demanding perfection in each tiny detail. The brush moved across the paper with a rhythm that felt almost like breathing, like waves, like something natural and alive. When she finished, she set down the brush and looked at the work. For a moment she saw it with her old eyes, noticing every small imperfection, every place where it didn't match some ideal form. But then she saw it with her new understanding. The characters had vitality. They had grace. They had a sense of spontaneous creation as if they had just been born in that moment. They weren't mechanically perfect, but they were beautiful. They were alive. The patron was delighted. "This is wonderful," he said. "Your calligraphy has such energy. I've seen your work before and it was always technically excellent. But this has something more. It feels free. Free." That word again. Hannah realized what had changed. By letting go of her tight grip on perfection, she had freed herself to actually create. Her attachment to an impossible standard had been choking her art. Now, holding her expectations more lightly, she could work with joy instead of fear. Years later, Hannah became known not just for her technical skill, but for the life in her work. Students would come to learn from her, and she would always teach them the same lesson first. "Hold your brush lightly," she would say. "Hold your expectations lightly. Hold even your successes lightly. The tighter you grip, the less you can create. Let your work flow through you rather than forcing it into being." She kept one piece of calligraphy in her workroom, hanging where she could see it every day. It was the poem she had written for that patron, the first piece she had created after learning to let go. It wasn't perfect. She could see the imperfections clearly, but those imperfections were part of its beauty. They showed that it had been made by human hands with all the wonderful uncertainty that comes with being alive and present and willing to make mistakes. This teaching about holding things lightly extends to every part of life. We hold our plans too tightly and become rigid when circumstances change. We hold our beliefs too tightly and can't see new truths. We hold our successes too tightly and fear their loss. We hold our failures too tightly and can't move beyond them. We hold our very identity too tightly and can't grow or change. The Buddha taught that this grasping, this tight holding is what the Pali word upadana means. It's not just attachment but clinging, gripping with tight fists. And this clinging creates suffering because life is fluid, constantly changing, always flowing. When we try to grip water, it slips away. When we try to grip life, we miss it. But when we hold things lightly, when we open our hands and let things rest gently in our palms, we discover freedom. We can enjoy things without needing to possess them. We can love without needing to control. We can create without demanding perfection. We can live fully without the constant fear of loss. Like Katsuro learning that his possessions owned him more than he owned them, and Hannah discovering that tight control strangled her creativity, we can learn to hold our lives with a gentler grip. This doesn't mean we care less. It means we care in a way that's free from fear, free from grasping, free from the exhausting work of trying to control everything. This lightness, this freedom is always available. It comes not from getting rid of everything we care about, but from changing how we hold what we care about. From closed fists to open hands, from tight control to gentle allowing, from possession to appreciation, from grasping to receiving. In Zen Buddhism, there's a teaching about the difference between pain and suffering. Pain is what life brings. A body gets sick. A relationship ends. Plans fall through. Loss happens. These experiences are part of being human. We can't avoid them completely. But suffering is what we add to pain through our resistance. When we fight against what's already happening, when we argue with reality, when we tell ourselves this shouldn't be, we create a second layer of difficulty. We take the pain that's already present and multiply it with our struggle against it. Think of it this way. If you have a thorn in your foot, that hurts. That's pain. But if you spend all your energy insisting that the thorn shouldn't be there, getting angry at yourself for stepping on it, raging at the unfairness of thorns existing, you make the situation much worse. The thorn still hurts, but now you've added emotional suffering on top of physical pain. Zen teaches us a different way. Accept what is. Not as giving up or not caring. Not as pretending everything is fine, but as acknowledging reality clearly without the extra layer of struggle. When we stop fighting with what's already here, we free up energy to respond skillfully. With clear seeing we can take whatever action is appropriate. Let's explore a story that shows this teaching. There was a weaver named Ayam who lived in a mountain village. She was skilled at her craft, creating beautiful cloth on her loom. The rhythm of weaving was like meditation to her. The shuttle passing back and forth, the threads coming together. She could lose herself for hours in the work. Ayam had spent years building her small business. She sold her cloth at the market and over time had developed a good reputation. People knew her work was quality. They would seek her out, ask for specific patterns, commission special pieces. She had regular customers who bought from her every season. Her income was modest but steady. She felt grateful for the life she had built through her skill and hard work. One autumn, disaster struck the village. Heavy rains came, lasting for many days without stopping. The sky was gray from dawn to dusk, water falling in sheets. The river that ran through the valley swelled beyond its banks, brown and churning with debris. Water poured down the mountain slopes, gathering force, picking up soil and rocks as it rushed downward. A mudslide hit the village in the night, a sound like thunder that woke everyone from sleep. Ayam woke to shouting and confusion, people running through the darkness, the sound of destruction, wood cracking, earth moving. She left her house, joining others in the street, trying to understand what had happened. When dawn came and she could finally see, her heart sank. Her workshop was gone. The building that had stood at the edge of the village where she had worked for so many years was completely buried under mud and rocks. Only one corner of the roof was visible, sticking up at an angle. Her loom was destroyed, crushed under the weight. The cloth she had been working on for weeks, a complex pattern she had spent days planning, was ruined, buried somewhere in the mud. The threads she had prepared, dyed in colors she had mixed herself, were lost. The tools she had collected over years of work, each one familiar to her hands, were gone. Everything she needed for her work was under tons of mud and debris that would take weeks to clear. Ayam stood looking at where her workshop had been, feeling shock settle over her like a heavy blanket. Her legs felt weak. Her chest felt tight. Years of work destroyed in one night. Her livelihood gone. How would she support herself? How would she start over? She was not young anymore, past 50, and the thought of rebuilding from nothing seemed impossible, overwhelming. In the days that followed, as the village began to recover, and people started clearing debris and making plans, Ayam found herself consumed with bitter thoughts. These thoughts ran through her mind in circles, repeating endlessly. This shouldn't have happened. It wasn't fair. She had worked so hard, done everything right. She had been careful with her workshop, maintained it well. She had hurt no one. Why was she being punished? What had she done to deserve this? She would lie awake at night, staring into darkness, her mind circling through these thoughts without rest. The unfairness of it, the cruelty of nature, the impossibility of starting over, the difficulty that stretched ahead of her. She noticed that other villagers who had lost homes or workshops seemed to be moving forward with their recovery. They were out each day clearing debris, salvaging what they could, making plans, helping each other rebuild. Their faces showed sadness, showed loss, but also showed determination. But I felt stuck, frozen. She couldn't seem to start. She would wake each morning intending to begin clearing the site. But then the weight of this shouldn't have happened would settle on her and she couldn't move. She would just sit staring at the ruins, trapped in her resistance. One morning an old woman came to see her. Her name was Tomo and she was known in the village for her wisdom. She had lived a very long life, more than 80 years, and had seen many difficulties, floods and fires, deaths and losses. She had raised 5 children alone after her husband died young. She had rebuilt her own house twice. She found I sitting where her workshop had been, just staring at the mud and rubble as she had been for days. Still looking at what's gone, Tomo asked gently, lowering herself to sit on a rock beside I. Her movements were slow but steady. "It's not fair," I said, her voice tight with emotion. "I worked so hard for so many years. I built this business from nothing. Why did this happen to me? What did I do wrong? Why not you?" Tomo replied, her tone not unkind but direct. Matter of fact. I looked at her, startled by the response. No one else had said anything like this. Everyone else had offered sympathy, had said how terrible it was. "What do you mean? Why not me? You think you should be special? That hardship should visit everyone else but pass you by? That you deserve protection that others don't? Rain falls on everyone. Rivers flood without checking who lives nearby. Mountains slide. Nature doesn't stop to see who has worked hard or who deserves to suffer. It just moves as it moves. The mudslide didn't choose you. It just happened. And your workshop was in its path. But I lost everything. My whole livelihood is buried under that mud." "Yes," Tomo agreed. "That's true. That's what happened. But notice what you're doing. You're spending all your energy arguing with what already happened. You're fighting with the past. Can you change it? Can you make the mudslide not have happened?" "No," I admitted. "But I can't just accept it. It's too much." "Acceptance doesn't mean you like it," Tomo said. "It means you stop adding suffering to pain. The mudslide already happened. That's painful. You lost your workshop. That's a real loss. But then you add all this extra suffering with your resistance. This shouldn't have happened. It's not fair. Why me? All of that is you fighting with reality, and reality always wins that fight." I sat with this. She could feel the difference Tomo was pointing to. There was the actual loss, the grief of losing her workshop and her work. That felt heavy but somehow clean. And then there was all the mental noise around it. The complaints, the sense of injustice, the endless why questions that felt sticky, exhausting, like quicksand. "So, what should I do?" she asked. "First, stop fighting with what already happened. The workshop is gone. The loom is destroyed. That's simply true. Can you acknowledge that clearly without all the story about fairness and shouldn'ts? My workshop was destroyed in the mudslide." The words felt simple, factual, sad, but not bitter. "Good. Now, what do you need to do?" "I need to build a new workshop. Get a new loom. Start over." "Yes. So start one step at a time. Not from anger at what happened, but from acceptance of what is. From here. Now, what's the first step?" Over the following weeks, I practiced this teaching. When her mind would start the old spiral of complaint and resistance, she would notice it. She would gently bring herself back to what was true. The workshop was gone. That was painful. She grieved for what she'd lost. But she stopped arguing with the reality of it. And something remarkable happened. When she stopped wasting energy fighting with the past, she had energy for the present. She started clearing the debris from where her workshop had been. It was hard physical work, moving rocks and mud, but it felt good to be doing something. Other villagers helped her. She hadn't asked, but they came. They worked together. When the site was clear, she began thinking about a new workshop. Maybe she could build it a bit differently this time. Maybe she could make some improvements she'd always thought about but never done. The disaster, while painful, had created an opening for something new. A merchant from a nearby town heard about the mudslide and came to see if any weavers had survived. He had customers waiting for cloth. When he found Ayam and heard her story, he offered to lend her a loom until she could get her own. He gave her thread to work with. She could pay him back gradually from her sales. Within a few months, Ayam had a new workshop, simple but functional. She had a borrowed loom and was weaving again. The cloth she created had a quality it hadn't had before. People who bought from her noticed something different, though they couldn't quite name it. There was a depth to her work now, a presence. When they asked her about it, Ayam would think for a moment before answering. "I lost everything in the mudslide," she would say. "And for a while, I spent all my energy being angry about it, insisting it shouldn't have happened. But then I learned something. Fighting with reality is the most exhausting thing you can do. When I stopped fighting and just accepted what was true, I found I had energy to rebuild. I found that loss and creation can live side by side. The mudslide still happened. I still lost my original workshop. But that loss doesn't define everything. Life continues. Cloth needs to be woven and I can weave it." This teaching about acceptance is central to Zen practice. Often, our suffering doesn't come from the difficulty itself, but from our refusal to accept that the difficulty is here. We argue with what is. We fight with reality. We insist things should be different than they are. We tell ourselves stories about how things should have been, how they should turn out. We insist that reality should be other than it is. But the Buddha taught that this resistance is what creates suffering. The Pali word dukkha means suffering. But it also means struggle, resistance, friction. It's the feeling of something being wrong, not fitting, rubbing the wrong way. This friction comes not from circumstances themselves, but from our relationship with circumstances. When we accept what is, we don't necessarily like it. We don't say everything is fine when it isn't. We don't pretend pain doesn't hurt. We simply stop arguing with reality. We see clearly what's true, feel what we feel, and respond from there. Let's look at another story that shows this teaching from a different angle. There was a scholar named Tomo who had dedicated his life to learning. He lived in a small room attached to a temple, spending his days reading ancient texts, copying important passages, pursuing wisdom through study. He had a brilliant mind and a deep love of knowledge. Books were his passion, his comfort, his life's work. Tomo had a particular weakness, his eyes. Since childhood, his vision had been poor. He had to hold books very close to read them. He had to squint and strain. But he managed. He worked with what he had. His desire to learn was strong enough that he pushed through the difficulty. As he aged, his eyes grew worse. The characters on the page became harder and harder to see. He had to strain more. The work became exhausting, but he kept pushing, refusing to acknowledge the limitation. He would read until his head ached, until his eyes burned with fatigue. He insisted to himself that if he just tried harder, focused more, he could overcome this obstacle. One afternoon, after hours of straining to read a difficult text, Tomo's vision suddenly blurred. Everything became indistinct, fuzzy. He blinked, rubbed his eyes, but the blur remained. Panic rose in his chest. He tried to read the text again, bringing it so close his nose almost touched the page, but he couldn't make out the characters anymore. He went to a physician, a woman known for her knowledge of such ailments. She examined his eyes carefully, asked questions, shook her head. Your eyes have been damaged by years of strain. They need rest. You must stop reading for a long time. Maybe months, maybe longer. I can't stop reading, Tomo said immediately. That's my life. That's my work. There must be another way. There isn't, the physician said. If you keep pushing, you may lose your sight entirely. Your eyes need rest. That's the reality. Tomo left the physician's house in distress. This couldn't be happening. He was a scholar. Reading was what he did. It was who he was. How could he be a scholar who couldn't read? It was impossible. It was unacceptable. There had to be a way around this. For days, he tried to keep working despite the physician's warning. He would hold books at different angles, trying to find a position where the characters would come into focus. He would sit by the window where the light was best, then move to a lamp when the sun set. He would blink hard and rest for a moment, pressing his fingers gently against his closed eyelids, then try again. But the physician was right. His eyes couldn't do it anymore. They had been pushed beyond their limit. The more he tried, the worse they became, as if in rebellion against his demands. He developed headaches that started behind his eyes and spread across his entire skull, lasting for hours. The blur in his vision spread, growing worse each time he tried to read. Sometimes he would see flashes of light at the edges of his vision. The pain became constant. Finally, exhausted and in pain that made him feel sick, Tomo gave up. He carefully put away his books, stacking them on the shelves, running his hands over their covers one last time. Each one represented hours of reading, knowledge gained, passages copied. He closed the shutters over his shelves, unable to bear looking at what he couldn't access. He sat in his small room with nothing to do, feeling utterly lost. Who was he without his books? His entire identity had been built around study and learning. What was the point of his life if he couldn't read? What did he have to offer? He felt like he had lost himself along with his ability to see clearly. The temple's abbot, an old monk named Ijin, came to visit a few days later. He found Tomo sitting in darkness, curtains drawn over the window, shutters closed, doing nothing. Just sitting on his mat, staring at nothing, lost in his thoughts. "Your eyes trouble you," Ijin observed, settling himself on the floor across from Tomo. His voice was gentle, without pity. "I can't read," Tomo said. The words bitter in his mouth like ash. "My life's work is over. Everything I've built, everything I am, depends on reading. I might as well be dead. What use is a scholar who can't see? Your eyes need rest, I hear." The physician said months, perhaps longer. "Yes, but I can't accept that. I won't accept that. I'm a scholar. I need my eyes. This shouldn't be happening. There must be some other treatment, some other physician who knows more. This can't be the answer." Ijin was quiet for a moment, just sitting in the dimness. Then he asked, "Are your ears damaged?" The question surprised Tomo, pulling him out of his circular thoughts. "No, my hearing is fine. Better than fine, actually." "Your mind, can you still think? Can you still understand complex ideas? Can you still remember what you've learned over all these years?" "Yes, of course. My mind works perfectly well. It's just my eyes that are failing me." "Then you can still learn," Ijin said simply. "Just not through your eyes for a while. Just not in the way you're accustomed to. But all wisdom is in books. How can I learn without reading? Is it?" Ijin asked. "All wisdom is in books. What about the wisdom of living, of experiencing, of listening? I've known many learned scholars who couldn't see the wisdom right in front of them because they were always looking at pages." Tomo sat with this. He had spent his whole life believing that wisdom came from books, from study, from reading what wise people had written. But Ijin was suggesting something different. "Can you accept that your eyes need rest?" Ijin asked. "Not as a punishment, not as a tragedy. Just as what's true right now." "It's hard," Tomo admitted. "Yes, because you've attached your whole identity to being someone who reads. But you're more than your eyes. You're more than your ability to study texts. Can you be curious about who you are when you can't read? What else might be there? Over the following weeks, Tomo tried to practice acceptance. It was difficult. Perhaps the hardest thing he'd ever done. When his mind would start insisting that this shouldn't be happening, that he needed to find a way to keep reading, that there must be some solution he hadn't tried yet, he would notice the resistance. He would feel it in his body as tension, as a clenching in his chest. He would try to come back to what was simply true without the overlay of argument. His eyes needed rest. That was the reality. Fighting it wouldn't change it. Denying it wouldn't make it less true. And slowly, gradually, a strange thing happened. When he stopped fighting, when he accepted his limitation without the constant mental struggle against it, he began to notice other things. Things that had been there all along, but that he'd been too busy to see, too focused on his books to appreciate. He started really listening to people when they spoke. Before, when someone would talk to him, part of his mind was always elsewhere, thinking about the text he just read or the next one he wanted to study. Now, with nothing else demanding his attention, he could be fully present to the speaker. He heard nuances in their voices he'd missed before. He noticed pauses and hesitations that revealed uncertainty. He caught warmth and humor that had passed him by. He discovered that listening deeply was its own kind of study, its own source of wisdom. He started paying attention to the sounds around him. The birds that sang in the temple garden. He began to recognize individual songs, to notice patterns. The wind moving through bamboo had a particular sound different from wind through pine. The rain on the roof created rhythms that changed with the intensity of the downpour. The temple bells rang at different times of day, and each ringing had a slightly different quality depending on temperature and humidity. He found that he could learn from these sounds, from what they taught about change and pattern and rhythm, about the constant movement of life. He began asking people to read to him. At first, this felt humiliating, having to depend on others for access to the texts that had once been his alone. But he swallowed his pride and asked. Young students would come and read texts aloud while he listened, sitting with his eyes closed to rest them. He discovered that hearing wisdom spoken was profoundly different from reading it silently. It entered him differently, moved through him in a new way. The rhythm and emphasis of the reader's voice brought out meanings he would have missed on the page. He understood ideas in new ways, more felt than intellectual. The students enjoyed these sessions too. He found they would read a passage and then they would discuss it together. Tomo found himself learning from the students' questions and insights, from their fresh perspectives, things he would have missed if he'd been reading alone in his usual isolation. He started spending more time in the temple garden. Without books to occupy him, he had time to simply sit and observe. He watched how plants grew, how light changed through the day, how the garden existed in constant subtle motion. He found teachings in all of this that were as valuable as anything in texts. Months passed. Eventually, very gradually, his eyes began to heal. The physician said he could start reading again, but only in small amounts with regular rest. Tomo discovered that he no longer wanted to spend all day with books. He had learned other ways to engage with wisdom. He read now with more care, more presence, savoring each text rather than rushing through volume after volume. He realized something profound. His damaged eyes, which he had seen as a catastrophe, had been a teacher. By forcing him to stop doing the one thing he'd always done, they had opened him to other ways of learning, other sources of wisdom. If he had been able to keep reading, he would have missed all of this. When students would come to him frustrated by their own limitations, Tomo would share what he'd learned. "I spent years fighting against my poor vision," he would tell them. "I insisted it shouldn't be that way. All that resistance just made me suffer more and damaged my eyes further. When I finally accepted the reality, accepted the limitation, I discovered it wasn't a limitation at all. It was an opening." Sometimes what we think is blocking us is actually redirecting us towards something we need to learn. These stories point to a central truth in Zen practice. Life includes difficulty. Bodies have limitations. Circumstances change in ways we don't choose. Loss happens. We can fight against these realities, insisting they shouldn't be true, or we can accept them and discover what becomes possible from that acceptance. The Buddha taught that the second arrow is optional. When life shoots us with an arrow of pain or difficulty, that's the first arrow. We can't always avoid it. But when we shoot ourselves with a second arrow of resistance and complaint and refusal to accept what's true, that suffering is optional. That second arrow is one we pick up and use on ourselves. Acceptance is the practice of not shooting the second arrow. It's seeing clearly what's true and meeting it without adding extra layers of struggle. This doesn't make difficulties disappear. I am still lost her workshop. Tomo still damaged his eyes. But both discovered that acceptance freed up energy for response, for creativity, for growth. When we stop fighting with reality, we can actually engage with it. When we accept limitations, we often discover they're not as limiting as we thought. When we allow difficulty to be difficult without insisting it shouldn't be, we find we can bear it more easily than when we're fighting it every step of the way. This is the wisdom of acceptance, not passive resignation, not giving up, but clear seeing, meeting what is with open eyes and an open heart. And from that place of acceptance, responding with whatever wisdom and skill we have. In Zen Buddhism, there's a teaching that might surprise you. Truth is simple, not easy, but simple. We often think that wisdom must be complicated, that enlightenment requires understanding complex philosophy or mastering difficult techniques. We search for the answer in distant places, in ancient texts, in elaborate practices. But Zen points to something much more direct. Truth is right here, right now in ordinary life. It's not hidden behind layers of complexity. It's not reserved for those who have studied for years or achieved special states. It's as close as your next breath, as immediate as the sensation of sitting or lying down, as available as this moment. The problem isn't that truth is hard to find. The problem is that we keep looking past it, thinking it must be somewhere else, something more impressive or complicated. We add layers of thought and interpretation to simple experience, then wonder why we can't find peace. Zen practice is about removing these layers. Coming back to what's simple and direct, not adding more knowing, but discovering what's here before we add all our ideas about it. This is why Zen stories often seem puzzling. They're not trying to give you complex answers. They're trying to point you back to simple, direct experience. Let's explore a story that shows this teaching. There was a young monk named Ren who had been studying at a monastery for 3 years. He was earnest and dedicated, spending long hours in meditation, studying texts, learning forms and rituals. He wanted to understand Zen deeply. He wanted to achieve enlightenment. He would ask his teacher, Master Sato, question after question about the nature of mind, the meaning of emptiness, the path to awakening. Master Sato would answer briefly, often with words Ren didn't fully understand. This frustrated Ren. He felt like the master was holding back, not giving him the real teaching. There must be some secret knowledge, some special technique that the master wasn't sharing yet. One day, Ren was working in the monastery garden, pulling weeds. It was hot. Sweat ran down his back. His knees hurt from kneeling. His mind was full of questions about a text he'd been studying, complex ideas about consciousness and reality. He barely noticed what he was doing, his hands pulling weeds automatically while his mind churned through philosophical puzzles. Master Sato came and knelt beside him, picking up a weed and examining it. "What are you doing?" the master asked. "Pulling weeds," Ren replied, not really paying attention. "Are you?" Ren looked at the master, confused. "Yes, I'm pulling weeds." "That's what you asked me to do." "Your hands are pulling weeds," Sato said. "But where are you?" "You're somewhere in your head thinking about ideas. You're not here at all." Ren realized this was true. He had been so lost in thought that he hadn't really been present to the actual experience of gardening. "I was thinking about the text we studied yesterday, about emptiness and form. I don't understand it yet." "Pull this weed," Sato said, pointing to a particularly stubborn plant. Ren pulled. The weed came out with effort, roots bringing up clumps of soil. "What did you just experience?" Sato asked. "I pulled a weed. The roots were deep. It took effort." "Did you need to understand a text to do that? Did you need to know about emptiness and form?" "No, I just pulled." "And when you were fully engaged in pulling, thinking about nothing else, where was the problem of understanding complex ideas?" Ren paused. In that moment of simply pulling the weed, giving his full attention to that action, his mind had been quiet. There had been no confusion because there had been no thinking, just the direct experience of pulling. "You're making everything complicated," Sato continued. "You think wisdom is somewhere else in texts and ideas, but it's right here in pulling weeds, in feeling hot, in your knees hurting, in the soil under your fingernails. This is your life happening right now. But you keep missing it because you're looking for something more impressive." "But surely enlightenment is more than just pulling weeds," Ren protested. "Is it? What is enlightenment if not being fully present to pulling weeds when you're pulling weeds? Fully present to eating when you're eating? Fully present to sitting when you're sitting? You're looking for something grand and special, but you're missing what's ordinary and real." This conversation troubled Ren. It seemed too simple. Surely there was more to Zen practice than just being present to ordinary activities. He continued his studies, his meditation, his questions. But Master Sato's words stayed with him. A few weeks later, Ren was eating his midday meal in the dining hall. It was simple food, rice, and vegetables. As usual, his mind was elsewhere, planning what he would study that afternoon, reviewing what he'd learned that morning. He barely tasted the food, eating mechanically while his thoughts raced. Master Sato sat down across from him. The old monk ate slowly, seeming to give his full attention to each bite. He would lift the food to his mouth, chew carefully, swallow, then pause before taking another bite. There was no rush, no distraction, just eating. Ren watched him, fascinated. There was something about the master's presence that was different. "Master?" Ren asked, "What are you doing?" Sato looked at him with surprise. "Eating. But you look so present, so focused. Are you doing some special practice?" "I'm eating," Sato repeated. "When you eat, do you eat or do you think plan review somewhere else entirely while food passes into your mouth?" Ren looked down at his bowl. He had eaten half his meal without tasting any of it. He had no memory of it at all. His body had been eating while his mind had been completely elsewhere. "Try eating just one bite with full attention," Sato suggested. Not thinking about eating. Not analyzing the experience, just eating. See what you discover. Ren picked up a small amount of rice with his chopsticks. He brought it to his mouth. Usually, this was automatic. But this time he tried to be present. He felt the texture of the rice grains against his tongue. He tasted the subtle flavor. He felt the warmth. He chewed slowly, noticing how the texture changed. He swallowed and felt the food moving down. It wasn't dramatic or enlightening in the way he'd imagined enlightenment would be. But there was a quality of aliveness, of presence, of simple being that he hadn't experienced before. It was just eating rice, but it was also somehow more than that. Or maybe it was exactly that, and that was enough. He began to practice this simple presence in other activities. Walking from the meditation hall to his room, he would try to just walk. Feel his feet touching the ground. Notice the movement of his legs. Feel the air on his skin. When his mind would wander to thoughts about Zen or about his progress, he would gently bring it back. Just walking. Just this step, just this moment. Washing his bowl after meals, he tried to be present to washing. The feel of water on his hands, warm or cool depending on the season. The movement of his hands scrubbing. The sound of water splashing in the bowl. The way the bowl became clean, not rushing through it to get to something else more important, not thinking about what he'd do next, just washing, just this bowl, just these hands moving in water. Even during formal meditation, his approach changed. He stopped trying to achieve special states or understand complex ideas. He stopped monitoring his progress or judging his performance. He just sat present to sitting. The sensation of breathing, air moving in and out of his body. The sounds around him near and far. The thoughts that came and went like weather. All of it simple, direct, immediate. His mind constantly wanted to complicate things, to add layers of thinking and interpretation and judgment. Being simply present to ordinary experience without any agenda or goal was actually harder than understanding complex philosophy or mastering difficult techniques. But it was also more real, more alive, more satisfying in a way he couldn't quite explain. There was a fullness to simple presence that all his complex thinking had never provided. One day, a year after the conversation in the garden, Ren was again pulling weeds. The sun was hot. His back ached from bending. His hands were dirty, but this time he was just pulling weeds. His hands in the soil, feeling the texture of dirt, the resistance of roots as he pulled, the heat of the sun on his back and shoulders. His mind was quiet. Not because he'd forced it to be quiet, not because he was trying to be mindful, but because he was fully engaged with what he was doing. There was no room for extra thinking when he was completely present to this simple task. The weeding was enough. This moment was enough. Master Sato came and knelt beside him again. They worked in silence for a while. Then Sato said, "Now you're pulling weeds." Ren smiled. He understood. He had been searching for something grand and complicated. But wisdom was right here in the ordinary, in the simple, in the direct experience of life as it actually was. Not in ideas about life, but in life itself. "I spent so much time making everything complex," Ren said. "Looking for special knowledge, secret teachings, but it was always right here, wasn't it? In eating, walking, pulling weeds." "Yes," Sato replied. "Zen is very simple. Not easy, but simple. The difficulty comes from our resistance to simplicity. We think truth must be complicated. So, we keep looking past what's right in front of us. But when you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. When you sit, just sit. That's the whole teaching." Years later, when Ren became a teacher himself, students would come asking for complex teachings, secret techniques, special knowledge. He would sometimes smile, remembering his younger self. Then he would ask them to do some simple task with him. Sweeping the floor, preparing tea, sitting quietly. And in that simplicity, some students would discover what he had discovered. That wisdom isn't hidden in complexity. It's revealed in simplicity. That truth isn't somewhere else. It's right here, right now, in the most ordinary moments of life. Tonight, you've journeyed through the gentle wisdom of Zen Buddhism. You've explored letting go of control and trusting life's natural flow. You've discovered that thoughts are like clouds passing through the sky of awareness and that you are the sky, not the clouds. You've learned that everything changes and this impermanence rather than being sad makes each moment precious and worthy of your full attention. You've touched the freedom that comes from holding things lightly, from caring without grasping. You've seen how acceptance eases suffering, how meeting life as it is creates space for genuine response. And you found that truth is beautifully simple, present right here in this ordinary moment. These teachings aren't separate from your life. They are your life seen clearly. When you wake tomorrow, you won't need to remember everything you heard tonight. The wisdom has already touched you, planted seeds that will grow in their own time, in their own way. For now, let yourself rest completely. All the striving can stop. All the figuring out can wait. All the questions can rest. Nothing needs your attention right now. Nothing requires solving. You can simply be here breathing, present, at peace. The teachings of Zen remind us that peace isn't something to achieve or work toward. It's what we are when we stop struggling, when we stop adding layers of complexity to simple presence. Tonight, let all that go. Let your body rest. Let your mind settle. Let your heart be open and quiet. There's nothing to do, nowhere to go, nothing to become. Just this breath. Just this moment. Just this gentle allowing of everything to be exactly as it is. The peace you've been looking for has been here all along, waiting for you to stop searching and simply recognize it. In the quiet space between thoughts, in the stillness beneath activity, in the simple presence of being alive and aware right now. So let everything soften. Let everything release. Like a leaf falling from a tree, drifting gently to the ground. No effort, no force, just natural letting go. Just this gentle release into rest. Your body knows how to rest. Your mind knows how to settle. Trust this natural wisdom that's deeper than thought. Let everything soften. Let everything be exactly as it is. May you rest deeply tonight. May you wake refreshed. May you carry the gentle understanding you've touched here into whatever tomorrow brings. Sleep well and thank you for spending this time with us here at Monk's Moon Temple.